Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Wednesday, January 30th, 2019.
Commissioner Garcia, Cabello, James, and Davis are present. President James, we do have a quorum. May we start with Bureau introductions, please, starting with Bureau of Engineering.
Patrick Schmidt, Bureau of Engineering.
Sherry Kuroki, Bureau of Sanitation.
Chantal Asapian, Bureau of Street Lighting.
Good morning, Pamela Ostrander, Bureau of Street Services.
Good morning, Seffi Wiles, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. President James, we do not have any speaker cards under general public comment. We did receive a speaker card on item number 14 from the San Pedro Neighborhood Council commentary, so at your discretion, we can take that under the Neighborhood Council commentary section, or we could hear it under 14 as well. In addition...
Okay, go ahead.
In addition to that, we did receive speaker cards on items number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, and 14.
Okay. And we're getting started a little bit later than normal today, and it certainly looked like for people that are fairly regular attendees of our board that it was, there's a lot of activity up here. We have new systems where we're going paperless, and it'll be a while before I get to be paperless, but we're all trying to get there, and getting links to reports and supplemental reports, and discussing, which we're going to have to get to in a minute, on agenda item number 12, a date that we have to continue an item, if a continuance is even possible. All of that took the first few minutes before we started the meeting this morning. First of all, let me see if I've got... Let's take care of number 1, Dr. Campos. We have bids to be received for a public works project, and there's been a request to continue the opening of the bids to Wednesday, February 13th, 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's been a request from the Bureau of Engineering to extend the bid for 2 additional weeks so that we can make some modifications on the bid award worksheet that bidders would have to submit their bids on. So rather than have them submit incorrect bids and reject them all, we would rather just correct the problem now and extend the bid for 2 additional weeks to Wednesday, February 13th with your approval.
Okay. So without objection, that'll be the order on agenda item number 1. On agenda item number 12, let me call number 12, and then we'll decide whether we're able to move forward today or if we're going to have to continue the item to a date that works for everyone. Agenda item number 12, Council Districts 8 and 10, requested contract award Arlington Avenue Sewer Rehabilitation, Jefferson Boulevard to Rodeo Road, recommending that the board first find transmittal numbers 2 and 4 to be unmerited as discussed in the report. Second, declare JR Pipeline Company Incorporated first low bidder to be the lowest responsible bidder and award JR Pipeline a contract for the project for $6,872,918. And third, authorize myself or 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute the contract after approval as to form has been obtained from the city attorney. Who's from the Bureau? Do we have a representative from engineering today on number 12? We don't. Well, that'll help in deciding whether or not we're going to continue the item. Yes, sir.
I could address that. My understanding is they would like to continue to Friday, February 1st.
Yeah, that was ideal, but we didn't know yet whether both sides were going to be able to continue the item as well. And let me just tell you, the reason initially for the requested continuance came initially from our general counsel in the city attorney's office for a couple of extra days. I wanted a couple of extra days on the item as well, myself, and so we thought about Friday. And then I understand from my conversation with Mr. Jordan, Mr. Westhoff, is Friday not available for your client? You represent, can you come forward, Mr. Westhoff?
Good morning, Mr. President, Commissioners. Unfortunately, yes, I already have Friday. I could do it Monday, the 3rd, or Mr. Jordan mentioned Monday the 11th, and that is also fine.
All right, here's the issue that we've got. You can't do Friday, which is the date that we had preferred. I had thought initially about moving it a week. Monday is not available for the board. I'm out on city business, so I won't be here. Wednesday is not available either because our meeting Wednesday is off-site. And it's a community meeting that we're doing in Council District 2. So my understanding is that we've got a bid bond expiration date that is, Mr. Ohanian, is that? Okay, come on. Could you come on up, please? So we have a bid bond expiration date. Do we need, Mr. Jordan, do we need agreement from all of the parties to extend the bid bond?
Well, if the bid bonds expire, then the bid becomes non-responsive. So I think it would be better, and it is certainly our practice, in a situation where we need to extend the bid award, to request the bidders to extend their bid bonds. So at a minimum, I would think that would be the first and second low bidder here. I don't know the status of the other bidders. But yes, bottom line
Well,
is...
at least for these two that are
Absolutely.
that are in the running. Mr. Westhoff, would your client be able?
Absolutely. I expressed that to Mr. Jordan when he raised the potential issue. I didn't know when the bids ran out, but
Okay, and do we
it's a
have?
common occurrence when we...
Sure.
Our
Do
board
we have a representative from JR Pipeline? Hi, please come forward.
Good morning, Matthew Siphon on behalf of JR Pipeline. JR Pipeline is anxious to get started with this project, but they are willing to extend their bid bond.
Okay, and let me just, thank you, sir. Let me just ask a representative from engineering. Here's what we might have to do. Wednesday's not available to us. Friday is not a date that we can do the hearing. The first day we could do the hearing would be Monday, February 11th.
11th.
Right. Is that a date that's satisfactory to engineering?
I believe the PM will be, project manager will be available on that day, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
For JR Pipeline, could you get your bid bond extended to the day after the 11th? We'll make a decision on the 11th.
Can you give me just a moment?
Of course.
Mr. President, if I could, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer, if the board is okay with holding this item on the table so that JR Pipeline and the second contender could go ahead and contact their
We've got plenty
the
of
bond
other
counsel
items today. Yeah.
so that they can make the arrangements to extend it to February 11th or February 15th, whatever the date may be, or an additional 30 days.
I got it.
Once we get the confirmation, then at that point, we know that the first and second runner-up is in the queue.
Yeah, and I think bid bonds are often extended in increments of time that are more round numbers, in terms of 30 days, but I would defer to the experts.
Fair enough.
That is correct. We usually ask for a 30-day extension.
I'm sure these two gentlemen will let us know what they're going to be able to get.
Perfectly fine with
Okay?
Mr. President, February 11th is fine. And
Okay.
Get the extension.
Great.
We would need some confirmation, so even though there's oral record that they would extend it, we would need confirmation from the bond companies that they are indeed extending the bond. Otherwise, an oral statement from the contractors is not sufficient for us to make sure that they're still in the runnings.
Okay. And when do you need that, and in what form, Dr. Campbell?
Typically just an email from the bond company indicating that they are going to extend it for an additional X amount of days. 30 days would be preferred. We can work with our front office to make sure that we receive those emails, and we've done this before within 20, 30 minutes. So if the contractors can contact their bond company and get the confirmation sent over to Mary Carter, that would be mary.carter@lacity.org. We'll make sure that we can get confirmation by the end of this meeting.
Commissioner James, Bureau of Engineering will process the official request to the contractors to extend their bid bond, and we'll inform them where to submit it. That's
Great.
typically our process.
Okay, thank you. And just for our representatives from the two companies, again, it's Mary, Mary.Carter, C-A-R-T-E-R, Mary.Carter@lacity.org. If possible, Dr. Campos, you would like that just a confirming email sent while we're here this morning, and we're definitely going to be here for an hour and a half or so. Okay?
All right.
Great, thank you. And then
We'll hold the
we're going to
item.
hold the item until we get those
Confirmation.
emails.
Commissioner James, Chris was just asking if the official request will come from our office, and
Normally the way it's
Yeah, normally that's the way we process it.
Okay, so can you make that request via email now?
Yes, we could.
You have a cell phone with you?
Will do.
Okay.
This is only a matter of timing. We don't know how the bonding companies are going to be able to get to it. We obviously have relationships, and they will extend. Normally, because the bonds don't expire, in this case, till the 5th, we have that length of time. So I think it might be better that, obviously, we have it done by the 5th, for sure, by the 4th, in order to give us time to get back to the office, contact the bonding company, and have them make the transmittal to Mary Carter.
Yeah, and I concur. I mean, we have the principles of the companies each representing that they will get their bonds continued. I think that is sufficient for the board to continue the item to the date that we've all agreed to. Now, there is some risk that notwithstanding the representation, the surety company says no, but it's not unusual for us to continue items with the Bureau requesting the bid bonds be extended without getting that formal confirmation of extension in hand prior to the meeting during which we continue the item.
So let's do this. Why don't we continue the item to the 4th? Because even though I'm going to be gone, the board will still be here. They won't hear the item that date, but it's a placeholder date in case something else procedurally needs to occur. Actually, Mr. Westhoff, you're not going to be here the 4th.
Correct. I'm going to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay. So, and we're not going to hear the item on the 4th.
Correct.
But
The only thing you'd be doing is on that date, it's on the agenda, item gets called, and then it gets continued to the 11th.
right. So on the 4th, we will learn, ostensibly, that all of the procedural stuff that we've been discussing regarding the bid bonds has occurred. And then on the 4th, Vice President Cabello can continue the item to the 11th.
That works for us. We intend to obviously have the extension in as quickly as possible. We'll be here long before the 4th, but I think that's a prudent way to go about it.
You won't need to be here on the 4th.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So
we'll have it in long before the 4th.
There will be no hearing on the 4th. Are we clear?
I can definitely do and execute what this board would like. However, if there's no benefit of continuing it from the 4th to the 11th, to me, just continuing to Monday, February 11th would be more practical in terms of noticing and putting it out for everyone to know that we will hear the item on Monday, February 11th, as opposed to the 4th. There's no benefit.
I'm fine with that.
And as long as Mr. Jordan's okay with that, based on, and just let me tell you in my mind what the discrepancy was. Whether or not we have to have this email communication from the bonding company or not, or whether or not, as Mr. Jordan said, we can accept the oral. If we can accept the oral representation from both of the representatives today, as Mr. Jordan has said we can, then there's no reason to have a placeholder on the 4th. We can move it to the 11th. We still anticipate getting all the email communications and everything taken care of by the 4th anyway.
Absolutely. And our intent is to have it in as quickly as possible. We just need to have the president of the company get back to the office and make that formal request of the bonding company.
Got it. Yes.
Certainly, and if we can get confirmation that each company has extended their bond or obtained extensions of their bond from the Department of Engineering, we'd appreciate it.
Okay. Again, Dr. Campos, does it make sense to just procedurally put the item over to Friday, this Friday, to confirm that all that's occurred, or does it make no sense at all?
To me, it makes no sense. There's still risk involved. If we continue the item now to Friday, Monday, or the 4th or the 11th, we still need confirmation from the bond companies that they extended the bond. If the bond does not get extended, then at that point, on Friday the 1st, this board would have to make either a decision or two. If the company cannot, if this board decides to continue the item to a future date beyond the 1st, then the bidders would have to make confirmation of the extension of the bond to continue to be in the runnings. So, in short, no, it makes no sense.
Let me tell you, and let me tell you why I am thinking about continuing the item until Friday, just to have it as a placeholder, not asking anybody to appear. If something happens in these email communications or there's a glitch, at least I've still got the agenda, I've got the item on the agenda, and we can legally, under the Brown Act, do something.
Correct.
On Friday. I don't expect having to do anything, but at least I've got the ability to do something if we need to. And then on Friday, I can kick it to the 11th. I'd bias a couple of days in there to get all this communication taken care of. I would feel better doing that. And so you don't have to be here Friday. We'll be here Friday, and we'll know by then if Dr. Campos has received, if you've gotten the email you need from BOE and Dr. Campos has gotten the emails he needs, then we'll kick it to the 11th. If we don't have something and we need to do something on Friday, Mr. Westhoff, then we'll have to deal with it accordingly.
That's perfectly fine, and Mr. Jordan knows how to reach me.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So expecting that this item will be heard on the 11th, procedurally, we're going to continue it to this Friday, February 1st. All right. Thank you all for your patience in working with us.
Very well, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, Bureau of Sanitation Memorandum of Agreement, Cost Sharing for Enhanced Watershed Management Program for Bologna Creek Watershed, Council Districts 1, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, and 14, recommending that the Board approve and forward the report with the transmittal to the Mayor for authority to execute the proposed Memorandum of Agreement between the Bureau of Sanitation and other public agencies regarding the administration and cost sharing for implementing the Enhanced Watershed Management Program and Coordinated Integrated Monitoring Program for the Bologna Creek Watershed, and authorize myself or 2 commissioners of the Board of Public Works and the Director of Sanitation to execute the Memorandum of Agreement upon Mayor's approval. Mr. Perry, welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, President James, Commissioners, and Bureau Representatives. My name is Brett Perry from the Watershed Protection Program at LA Sanitation and Environment, and today I'll be discussing items 4, 5, and 6, which are all 3 cost-sharing MOAs.
Well, let's start with number 4.
Number 4, okay.
All right.
The goal of the Watershed Protection Program is to make sure that the city meets all water quality regulations that apply to the city's waters, such as Santa Monica Bay, LA River, and Ballona Creek. Water quality in the city is regulated by the Federal Clean Water Act, the MPDS permit, or MS4 permit, for our storm drain system, and 22 total maximum daily loads, or TMDLs, that are in effect for specific pollutants in different city watersheds. The City of Los Angeles is the largest municipality in 4 major watersheds, and as the designated lead agency, we are working closely with over 30 other permittees or municipalities within our watersheds. This collaboration has resulted in the development of the Enhanced Watershed Management Programs, or EWIMPs, which are compliance strategies for our watersheds with specific actions and schedules for compliance by the city and other municipalities. Along with the EWIMPs, we also developed Coordinated Integrated Monitoring Programs, or SIMPs, for each watershed to address the monitoring requirements of the MS4 permit for each pollutant and the various TMDLs. The SIMP is implemented by our pollution assessment section and involves year-round sampling during wet and dry weather to characterize and track water quality improvements from our work over time. As the lead agency of our watersheds, we do a lot of work that benefits all of the municipalities within each watershed. Therefore, the purpose of these cost-sharing agreements is to make sure that LA San will be reimbursed for the work that we perform on behalf of other municipalities. This presentation is regarding 3 separate, first, the Ballona Creek watershed, and then following 2 Santa Monica Bay watersheds. These agreements outline the scope of work by LA San for the next 5 years, as well as the projected costs. Each municipality or other permittees within the watershed will reimburse LA San in the amount that is proportional to their land area of that watershed, as well as the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, which pays a flat fee of 5%. The term of these agreements is over 5 years, beginning this fiscal year and ending in the fiscal year 22-23, and the agreements have been approved by the City Attorney Office. The total cost of the 3 agreements is $8.26 million, and of this amount, the other municipalities will reimburse LA San an amount of $1.79 million. And I have that broken down, so I can give you just the Biona Creek number. The total for Biona Creek is 4.47 that LA San will put up front for all the monitoring and programming, and will be reimbursed just under $1 million by the other permittees, so about 21%. We are asking the board to approve and forward these MOAs to the mayor's office for authority to execute these agreements. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Any questions? Dr. Williams, you have a card in on 4, 5, and 6. Do you want one shot at it? One shot. Okay. Mr. Perry, we'll let Dr. Williams take a shot at it, and then we'll see if we have any questions. Go ahead, Dr. Williams. Yes. Well, he's finished on number 4, but yes. There may be some overlap.
Okay. Dr. Tom Williams, Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community, which is housed in Culver City. And we've been watching Biona Creek for a long time. Basically, we would like to have the city include public participation in these proceedings that are going forward for the next 5 years, and see if there's any sort of public participation and interest and concerns regarding the, quotes, enhanced flood control in Biona Creek. I personally have had experience because as part of the Metro Red Line Phase 1, we had to monitor Biona Creek for 5 years. So there is information available. We're quite concerned that it doesn't become LA River south of the 110. That is so much concrete. And from my background, they're going to have some concrete there someplace. And that's devastating to the lower part of Biona Creek. So we'd like to have public participation for this period of the MOA for Biona Creek and the wetlands. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Mr. Perry, you, I think, likely mentioned this, but if in the event you didn't, if you did, I'm going to put an exclamation point on it. If you didn't, I'm going to add it. It's in the board report, but I wanted it reflected in the oral record. You had indicated, as you mentioned, you indicated the breakdown of what the various proportional costs are, but the cost of each permittee is equivalent to the land area that they have as a percentage of the total watershed area.
Absolutely.
And that's very common in the way that sanitation does these things.
Yes. Yeah. When we work with the other municipalities, the only one that doesn't follow that would be the flood control district, who pay the flat 5%.
Okay. So there is a method to the math.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Perry on number 4?
I was going to ask
Commissioner
you,
Davis.
I think you may have touched on it. So our contract cities that are providing or receiving the service, all of them don't have a contract in this motion. You only have 2. Is that correct?
So we have this single MOA that brings together all of the cities, say, for Biona Creek watershed. Sure. And then we perform all the services, which is actually a lot of in-house services of our pollution assessment and sampling groups. And then also our staff who do the program compliance, such as annual reporting and adaptive management and modeling for the watershed. And so a lot of that work is done in-house, but I do know the pollution assessment group does have a few contracts for specialized sampling and lab testing that needs to occur, but that's through LA San. And so this is just for reimbursement from other cities for that service to prevent duplication of all this work by all the permittees within the watershed.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Anything further? Commissioner Cabello has made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 4, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 5, Mr. Perry, as you indicated, you're here for that as well. That's in Council District 15. Memorandum of Agreement, cost sharing for the Enhanced Watershed Management Program for the Santa Monica Bay watershed. That's Jurisdiction 7. Recommending that the board approve and forward the report with the transmittal to the mayor for authority to execute the proposed MOA between sanitation and the Los Angeles County Flood Control District regarding the administration and cost sharing for implementing the watershed management program and coordinated integrated monitoring plan for the Santa Monica Bay Watershed Jurisdiction 7. And secondly, authorize myself or two members of the board and the Director of Sanitation to execute the MOA upon mayoral approval. Mr. Perry, add whatever you would like on number 5.
Yeah, so pretty much duplicate. This is an identical agreement. This is a much smaller watershed. This is just one small jurisdiction within the many jurisdictions of the Santa Monica Bay watershed. So actually the only two permittees are the city and then the flood control district. So this one's really simple. It's just that flat 5%. In terms of the numbers, the costs outlined in the MOA are just over $1 million, and we'll get reimbursed about $50,000.
Okay. Any questions on number 5? No questions on number 5. Commissioner Caballos made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 5, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. Any objection? Without objection, we will adopt agenda item number 5. We can send number 5 forthwith. Number 6, Council District 11, Memorandum of Agreement, Enhanced Watershed Management Program for Santa Monica Bay Watershed. This is jurisdictions 2 and 3. Approve and forward the report with the transmittal to the mayor for authority to execute the proposed MOA between sanitation and other public agencies regarding the administration and cost sharing for implementing the Enhanced Watershed Management Program and coordinated integrated monitoring plan for the Santa Monica Bay Watershed Jurisdictions 2 and 3, and authorize myself or two members of the board to, as well as the Director of Sanitation, to execute the MOA upon mayoral approval. Mr. Perry on number 6.
Same story again. This time the permittees are the City of Los Angeles, the County of Los Angeles, El Segundo, and Santa Monica, and also the Flood Control District. So in terms of the numbers, the costs outlined are about $2.7 million, reimbursed just under $800,000.
Any questions? Commissioner Cabello has made a motion for number 6. I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 6. Any issue sending it forthwith? We'll send it forthwith. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day. Dr. Williams, let's go ahead and take care of your general public comment, sir. You have a public comment card in. General comment? Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Tom Williams, Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community. As public comment, I'm trying to get my wife retired. That's why I haven't been around. So tomorrow's the last day. So I won't be here on Friday. That's a QMD. Basics. Last night, there were over 50 people attending a public meeting regarding the Link Union Station project. This will incorporate areas that are part of Piper Center area and under its influence. We're quite concerned regarding the historic use of this area and the contamination that we found during the work for Union Station Red Line Phase 1. We had real problems. We spent $4 million treating groundwater because the groundwater was so affected by butadiene, by coal gasification at the first coal gasification plant site west of the Mississippi. It was there under Piper Center. Highway 101 the bridge is supported by the hearth blocks that were under the coal gasification. So we're quite concerned regarding the coordination between the City of LA and the county metro people regarding contamination and the effects on groundwater by having additional projects being constructed in that area, especially subsurface and with piling, foundations, and soil compaction. We don't want the water in the groundwater coming into the LA River through the weep holes that are there to relieve pressure on the LA River embankments. So we're quite concerned, and we have submitted a PRA request for all coordination and communications between LA City and the Metro. So it's a mess. I hope your projects that are already underway there don't get involved or that LA County pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. That will close general public comment. Agenda item number 9, Office of Community Beautification, Contract Amendment, Community Partners, recommending that the board authorize the Office of Community Beautification to execute a contract amendment with community partners to extend the term of the contract for city plants, tree planting coordination through June 2020. Mr. Roch. I also see a representative from City Plants here today.
Good morning. Paul Roch, Office of Community Beautification. OCB administers a contract with community partners to coordinate replacement tree plantings as part of this sidewalk repair program. Community Partners is the agency which then subcontracts and oversees the work with city plants. So this is actually an extension of a contract that would allow city plants to continue their work of coordinating tree planting as part of the sidewalk repair program. The contract expired at the end of 2018, and we are here this morning requesting approval to extend the term of service through June of 2020. No additional funds are being added as a part of this amendment. It's just an extension of term. So far, a total of 702 trees have been planted, coordinated by city plants as part of the sidewalk repair program. And in order to continue this valuable activity, we request approval from the Board of Public Works to amend the existing contract.
Thank you, Mr. Roch. Any questions? I don't have any questions. Commissioner Cabello has made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 9, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 9. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Any issue sending number 9 forthwith? We will send number 9 forthwith. Agenda item number 10, Council Districts 3, 4, and 5, a contract award Ventura Boulevard, Amigo Avenue to White Oak Avenue and Densmore Avenue to Calhoun Avenue. Street lighting project, recommending that the board declare Elecnor Belco Electric Incorporated, which is the first low bidder, to be the lowest responsive responsible bidder, and award Elecnor a contract in the amount of $815,801. Forward a copy of the report to the affected council offices, that's 3, 4, and 5, and authorize myself or 2 members of the board to execute the contract for the project upon approval of all the required documents by the city attorney. And I've got Shant Hovasapian?
Yes.
Oh, there you are, sir. Hi.
Thank you. Good morning. This is a federally funded project that converts the existing high-voltage street lighting system to low voltage by replacing the existing conduit, wires, and luminaires. A total of 260 LED luminaires and 10 LED soffit lights will be replaced. Financing for this project is front-funded by a loan from the Public Works Trust Fund and later reimbursed by the Federal Highway Administration. We are recommending award to the lowest bidder, Elecnor Belco Electric Incorporated. The bid was received on October 3, 2018, but the contractor has extended its bid bond to April 3, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions at all? No protest on this one. I'll make a motion that we adopt, well, I'm sorry, that was Commissioner Garcia's motion that we adopt agenda item number 11, so I'll second it. How's that? Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 10, I'm sorry. Any issues sending 10 forthwith? We'll send number 10 forthwith. Sure, you're here on number 11 as well.
Yes.
This is for Council District 9, contract award, Main Street Lighting Improvement Unit 1 project, recommending that the board approve the request. It's transmittal number 2 from Servitech Solutions, the first low bidder, to withdraw their bid for the project as discussed in the report. Secondly, find the bid protest transmittal number 3 submitted by Elecnor Belco, the third low bidder, to be unmerited as discussed in the report. And third, declare International Line Bidders, ILB, the second low bidder, to be the lowest responsive responsible bidder, and award ILB a contract in the amount of $1,265,472.04. Fourth, forward a copy of the report to the affected council district. That would be CD9. And fifth, authorize myself or 2 members of the board to execute the contract for the project upon approval of the required documents by the city attorney. Mr. Hovasapian, you're here again.
Yeah, this federally funded project replaces the existing high-voltage street lighting system with a low voltage by replacing the existing street lighting poles, foundations, conduit, wires, and luminaires. The existing system will be removed and a total of 57 new steel fluted poles with ornamental bases will be installed. Financing for this project is front-funded by gas tax and a loan from the Public Works Trust Fund and later reimbursed by the Federal Highway Administration. We are recommending award to the second lowest bidder, International Line Builders. The lowest bidder, Servitec Solutions Incorporated, has requested to withdraw its bid, claiming clerical errors in filling out the bid. The Bureau of Street Lighting has verified this claim by reviewing quotes submitted by Servitec Solutions subcontractor. The contractor has proven to the Bureau of Street Lighting's satisfaction that the errors were legitimate. Therefore, we are also recommending that the board approve Servitec's bid withdrawal request. The bid by International Line Builders was received on August 15, 2018, but the contractor has extended its bid bond to February 15, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan, are you okay with the request for the withdrawal of the bid that was transmittal number 2?
Yes, we concur.
Okay. Any other questions on agenda item number 11? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 11, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. Any objection? Without objection, we will adopt agenda item number 11. Thank you, sir. Any issue sending number 11 forthwith? We'll send number 11 forthwith. Yeah, let's go ahead and do the supplemental. We have I don't need to, I could ask my Brown Act expert over here. Our vice president tells me it's supplemental, so it's only a special that I need to adjourn the meeting and call the roll. We have a supplemental agenda item number 14. It was continued from Monday. Was it Monday? Or Friday? Whatever. It was continued to today. It was agenda item number 14, Council District number 15, sole source task for solicitation number 14-080, AECOM Technical Services, recommending that the board authorize the Department of Public Works Office of Accounting to disencumber $286,061.99 from Fund 206, Department number 50, that's ours, Appropriation Unit 50-50 LKDM, which was previously encumbered for the Paseo Del Mar Permanent Restoration, the White Point Project under contract C121569, based on a board report adopted July 27, 2015, which is expired, to make the funds available for contract number 130606, and authorize the city engineer to issue a sole source task order to AECOM. That's contract 130606 from the pre-qualified on-call geotechnical and environmental services consultants list to provide, I like to say that one twice, it's so long, pre-qualified on-call geotechnical and environmental services consultants list to provide design services for the White Point project as stated in task order solicitation 14080 with a budget authority of $1,239,768, which includes contingency. Mr. Garcia, even though we were here, whatever day it was, not long ago, Friday. Would you give us kind of the quick summary of what's going on agenda item number 14? We have a representative from the council office as well, which was initially we didn't know where the council office was related to the project, so we did some searching and discovered that quickly, and they have sent a representative, and we have a speaker card as well. So go ahead, Mr. Garcia.
Hello, Pedro Garcia, Bureau of Engineering, Geotechnical Engineering Division. So this item is to request authority to issue a sole source task to AECOM for design of the Paseo Del Mar Permanent Restoration Project and to disencumber funds from a task that was awarded on a previous contract that has now expired to free up those funds for this task. A little history on the project. The project's located in San Pedro on Paseo Del Mar between Gaffey and Western. In 2011, there was a landslide that took out about 600-foot section of roadway. The Bureau of Engineering performed various emergency landslide mitigation projects to stabilize the landslide and to clean it up and to do some nearby road improvements. Those projects have all been completed. In 2015, the Bureau awarded a task to AECOM under the previous contract to do a pre-design report, design, and design support services during construction. The contract, the AECOM performed the pre-design report, but then the project was put on hold due to lack of funding, and the contract expired. So this request is to now proceed with the design and award the task to AECOM.
Okay, and my recollection is, although Mr. Pinchef can speak for himself, and Mr. Ferguson, do you want to go last? Okay. Mr. Pinchef can speak for himself, but I do recall, we'll go to Mr. Pinchef if we don't have any questions. Commissioner Davis's discussion with Mr. Pinchef, the result was procedural on the EIR versus substantive, and we ended up with the answer on that on Friday. Mr. Pinchef, go ahead. Now, I will remind you, sir, as you well know, you're speaking under the Neighborhood Council category of commentary, which is, we don't put a time limit on you since your Neighborhood Council has taken official action on this project per se, even though not the specific agenda item exactly. But I always will step in when people start to repeat themselves. So go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you, Commissioners. I have a written statement that summarizes the statements that I made last time, but out of respect for the time of the Commissioners, I'll actually not go through that. I'll reiterate very briefly the points that I made last time instead. We, the Neighborhood Council, my name is Dean Pinchef, I'm representing the Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council. We have a position opposing awarding this contract at this time. And that's because we have some severe problems with the EIR, with issues in the EIR. And I'll highlight one in particular, which is that through the draft EIR process, no attention was paid to the issues of sea level rise and cliffside retreat on this cliffside construction. And specifically, this area of cliff is estimated to be retreating at a rate that by the end of the design lifetime of this project, by the end of 75 years, the cliff is predicted to have retreated by 50 feet. So the bridge may well be there in 2100, but the roadway of Paseo del Mar leading to it will no longer be there. Issues such as that have not been addressed and were raised, but we do not have a final EIR yet. So we don't know what the response of engineering and environmental analysis is to issues like such as that. We strongly support the CEQA process. We believe that the city decision makers will need full and complete information to make decisions on which of the alternatives to choose for this project. It's a project of extreme local interest and widely divergent opinions in the community. So it's a very high-profile project within San Pedro. At this stage, there is no final EIR, and that in the absence of a final EIR that addresses the concerns that were raised, with the draft EIR, and in the absence of decision-maker action that has selected one of the alternatives in the EIR, we fear that awarding this task order at the present time could give the impression of predetermination by the city of a particular outcome in the CEQA process. Therefore, we urge the board to refrain from authorizing this bridge design task order at the present until after, one, the CEQA process has concluded with a certified final EIR, and number two, a decision to build a bridge is the outcome of that process. I also want to emphasize that we are not opposing construction of a bridge, nor are we opposing selection of AECOM as the sole source for this design process. We simply feel that it would be appropriate to make that award after the final EIR process has completed and decision makers have chosen one of the design alternatives.
Thank you, Mr. Pinchef. Commissioner Davis, you have a question?
Yeah, I want to just summarize your statements to better understand the specific point of view of the neighborhood. One is, in fact, that the sea level rise has not been considered in the EIR process, correct?
That is correct.
The second one is that there is a roadway that will not be there, correct?
That is correct.
Can you expound upon that particular issue in terms of the
Certainly.
roadway?
Certainly. To be specific, those issues are not addressed through, have not been addressed through the, the draft EIR. It is possible that they are being addressed as responses to comments in the final EIR, which is being prepared. We have no knowledge of that. The issue is that we are in a time of rising sea levels. This is a construction project that has to do with building either bridge, or the other alternatives are piling or retaining wall alternatives to stabilizing the cliffside to allow the segment of Paseo del Mar that collapsed to be reconstructed. That roadway continues along the edge of the cliff. The section that fell away is one such segment. There are segments of that road, many segments of that road, that are much closer than 50 feet to the edge of the cliffside. That cliffside is not reinforced. It does not have riprap at the base of it. It does not have retaining walls along its length. And looking at estimates from the state of California and other research projects that have used modeling approaches to looking at historical and projected cliffside retreat rates in this area, picking an intermediate level of projected sea level rise, the estimates are that that area of cliffside will be retreating by 50 feet by the year 2100. What that means is that considerable segments of Paseo del Mar, the road that is being repaired, will no longer be in place.
And your concern is that through the EIR process, there was no discussion and deliberation about a position as it relates to the roadway not currently being there as a result of what occurred.
That's correct. We believe that analyzing seaside structures such as this, it's imperative to take into account the changes that will be happening in the local area over the design lifetime of the project.
So the community believes that EIR should have given some specific instructions as it relates to the fact that the roadway is not there, and to give guidance to the potential work that we would do in the city as it relates to addressing that issue. And you feel that the EIR did not allow for an opportunity to give instructions to us on how we would move forward with that challenge?
No, I would not entirely agree with that. The EIR certainly had the opportunity to do that analysis, but that analysis was not done.
I see. You would love for them to give us some instructions as it relates to the roadway not currently being there as a result of the disaster, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I believe it's for projects that are being planned and analyzed that have a design lifetime of 75 years. I believe it's an important part of the environmental review process to lay out what the projected future environment will be through the design lifetime of those projects.
Okay.
And I think
finally, my other question, the final question to you is there any other objective that the community has expressed as it relates to their response to the EIR? I mentioned two, sea level, and I mentioned the issue with regard to the road. Is there any other one that I might have not summarized?
I think yes, and I will also presume that Ryan Ferguson from the council office would reinforce my statement here, which is that at its very simplest, the response in the community has been highly divergent between groups that think that we absolutely have to replace that road because it's always been there and it should be there in the future, and groups who feel that this section of road collapsed with the hillside, with the cliff collapse. We are driving around it at this point. Maybe we're better off just leaving it as it is with minor improvements. Those two opinions are both very strongly held and both very widely held in the community. So
and the EIR did not address the possibility of leaving it current as it is.
That's correct, with the qualification that, of course, the no project alternative is present in the EIR. However, we also feel that doing absolutely nothing is not necessarily the only response that could be done. One could do remediation to the local roads to improve traffic flow given the changed situation. That alternative was never examined.
Okay, thank you for clarifying for me what the position of the community is.
Thank you. And to clarify the clarification, one of the most important aspects is that there is not a strong consensus in the community of the direction that this project should take. That, to me, is why it's very important that this whole process be as transparent and open as possible. Thank you.
That's helpful for questions that I would certainly have of our department who's presenting here today. Thank you so much.
It's always good to clarify the clarifications. Commissioner Cabello.
I'm going to clarify the clarification of the clarification by asking for a point of clarification, which is the EIR currently underway or has it been completed? Mr. Garcia, I don't know if you want to go ahead and answer that.
We have a representative from our environmental management group to answer your questions about the EIR.
BOE, always prepared.
Good morning. William Jones from the Environmental Management Group. I'm an environmental supervisor, and I'm here with Maria Martin, who's the group manager. This is the status of the environmental documentation. The environmental review process is approaching its final stages, and the final ER has been prepared, which includes a response to comments on the draft and a statement of overriding considerations and a mitigation monitoring reporting program. A joint board report by BOE and BSS recommending ER certification and project approval has been drafted and is currently under final review. The report should be submitted to our board unit this week.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from CD15, Mr. Ferguson. Maybe clarify where the council office is on this.
Yes, good morning, President James, honorable commissioners. Thank you for having me here today and to allow me to speak in front of you. The council office is supportive of awarding the contract to AECOM, but to address some of Mr. Pencheff's concerns and also to concur with his statements about, the divergence in the community about whether or not the roadway should be restored or left as is. It's about 50-50. There is no general consensus. But again, the council office is supportive of restoring the roadway. Originally in 2012, when Councilman Joe Buscaino was elected to the city council, he convened the White Point Landslide Advisory Committee, and it was a large group of stakeholders from around the San Pedro community, not just the general neighborhood, that ultimately, after I believe 3 or 4 meetings, voted to restore the roadway to as original as it was before it collapsed. Within the draft EIR and the final EIR being prepared, it was found that trying to do that would not be the most financially feasible option, and that the bridge option, not considering, no project alternative that obviously would be the most financially feasible, the bridge option was the one that came in at the lowest cost after pre-design was completed by AECOM.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, President James. I have just a couple other questions.
Is this for the council office or for Mr. Garcia?
No, it would be probably Mr. Garcia, I believe. So I understand that today what's on the board today is to authorize the sole source for AECOM, right?
Correct.
But that's not really what we are discussing with these multiple other situations. We're discussing the design of it, right? So is there still an opportunity during the design phase to have community input, or is that off the table already?
There has been community input as part of the pre-design phase during the, the public public comment for the EIR. Those comments were taken in and addressed in the final EIR, which is going to be presented to the board. So basically, that's the opportunity for public comment, and it has been performed.
So there was already public comment,
Yes.
input, there was community meetings done out in the community. We've gone through this
Yes.
already?
Yes.
Okay. So we are just not agreeing with what the design, what came out of the design from all those meetings and the research we did.
When you say we're not agreeing,
Our
community member?
Yes.
Yes, I believe that's what's happening.
Okay, just wanted to clarify kind of the whole
Yes.
conversation. Thank you very much. So that we look forward to the EIR report this week, and that will, this week, I'm sorry?
We're going to start the process for submitting the board report this week.
Okay.
So
It may
believe
be
it's
some
standard.
time before it gets
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you for,
Approximately 4 weeks before it comes to the board.
got it. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis, then Commissioner Cabello.
Wanted to ask engineering, given some of the comments that were made in terms of sea level, the rise of sea level, obviously the issue with regard to roadway not being there, and building a bridge, I guess, is a part of what is being proposed as one of the options to be implemented. But in terms of sea level rise and roadway not being there, weren't these factors considered, or were these factors considered in our current proposal and our future plans for the area from an engineering perspective?
Yes, the sea level rise is something that needs to be taken into account for any project, whether any alternative that we do out there. So that is going to be accounted for in the design of whatever option we design. We're going to have to account for sea level rise. As far as the roadway nearby, I guess the cliffside retreating to take out the roadway, if that becomes an issue, then engineering would probably address it at that point. But it's not something that we're looking at right now.
In terms of the roadway issue?
Yeah, the roadway in the area, the cliffside retreating, as a committee member mentioned, yes.
I see.
And taking out the roadway.
And so our position is that we will cross that bridge when we come to it, or?
If it becomes, an option.
Commissioner Davis
Okay.
hits a single this morning on the humor. Okay.
All right. This issue of leaving it alone, as an engineer, as the engineering bureau, what is your response to those individuals who have embraced the philosophy that we should leave it alone, realizing that there are others in the community who obviously don't agree with that? But how do you see it as an engineer, this whole issue of leaving it alone?
Well, from an engineering standpoint, the roadways that are constructed are part of a bigger overall plan for transportation in a certain area. And this roadway has been identified as, a roadway that basically needs to be there, and we need to comply with that plan and restore the roadway.
So to leave it alone, what impact would leaving it alone have as you see it as an engineer?
I'm not sure what the ramifications are for not complying with the overall mobility plan for the area. I'd have to go back and look at that, but as an engineer, that's what we abide by, is the mobility plans.
Some of the people who obviously feel that we should not leave it alone are obviously not here. And it would appear to me, when we talk about engineering and what you do professionally, and when we think about what our goal is in the city and trying to improve the quality of life for others, what impact would leaving it alone have for our overall organizational goal to improve the quality of life for others, and in this case, improving the quality of life for those in San Pedro in this district who've had to be in this particular environment, unfortunately, not having any control of what occurred? What impact as an engineer would you have representing the city of Los Angeles at leaving it alone as it relates to our improving the quality of life for these residents?
Well, two impacts that I can think of. One is obviously the quickest route from point A to point B across that section of roadway. If you can't make it, obviously it's going to add time to your commute, which is an inconvenience to people who use that roadway.
That's what I would.
Second is the inconvenience to the surrounding neighborhood through which people need to reroute to get from point A to point B. It's a pretty residential area, and to go around, there's a lot of excess traffic in residential areas that probably weren't designed to take that much traffic, so it's an inconvenience for that neighborhood too.
Well, I would certainly have a concern about our overall goal as an organization, as the city, which is obviously, once again, to improve the quality of life for others. I can't imagine leaving it alone. I'm very happy to hear that the council office feels a responsibility to be accountable for us doing something. Now, I'm not an engineer, but I am a resident of Los Angeles. And I do believe very strongly in what our mission is as a city. And it doesn't just relate to those of you who are engineers, but in everything we do. We aspire to improve the quality of life for others. And I just cannot figure out how leaving it alone in all due respect to the constituencies that believe in this, but how leaving it alone can help improve the quality of life. And I certainly, while I respect the council office's position, I really defer to the engineers who are doing this work. And so I'm very glad to hear you say that moving forward with doing something is better than doing nothing. I mean, just from where I sit, and I'm only one vote, but I have to tell you, as I see this in basic common sense for me, I'm resting on doing something because I believe that this is more germane to what we stand for in the city and improving the quality of life. And I rest on my opinion on this, really depending on what you tell me as an engineer of what you should be doing. And I think you and I are on the same page based upon what you've remarked today. So that's where I'm at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Cavale?
Thank you, President James. Mr. Garcia, can you tell me the consequence of postponing this item per Mr. Penshoff's request until after the EIR is completed? And I know that is going to be quite a while, but I'd just like to know what in that time frame would or would not occur had we not moved forward with this request for the sole source for AECOM.
Well, besides the obvious impact to the schedule and getting the roadway back in, there's a possibility of the funding perhaps not being available. It's quite a large amount allocated for the design, and if it gets delayed, it's possible that the funds could be reverted. So those are the only things at this point.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Ferguson, could I have you just for one more moment? I just want to confirm there's been a lot of discussion that's happened, much more discussion today than we had preliminarily on Friday, but I would like to get you on the record. Given the content of the discussion today, is the council office's position the same, that you still recommend moving the item forward today?
Absolutely, President James.
Okay, thank you. Then that'll be my motion that we move agenda item number 14, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, that'll be the order on today. Thank you all for your participation, to the Neighborhood Council as well, and Mr. Pinchoff for making 2 trips to City Hall so we could have everybody at the table for the decision, and for your continuing work on the project as well. Without objection, we'll send that item forthwith too. Thank you, everyone. Let's go to agenda item number 13. We have quarterly status reports on personal services contracts. Ms. Krokias, are you ready for us?
I'm ready.
Okay, I see you. So we'll start with you and go through these, and then we'll get to our above-ground facilities and our tree issue. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners, Bureau Rep, City Attorney, Executive Officer. My name is Sherry Kuroke. I'm with the Bureau of Sanitation. Here to report our contract updates for the quarter ending December 31st, 2018. The total amount billed since last quarter was $45.34 million. The total for contracts with subcontractor participation is as follows. For the older MBEWB outreach program contracts, $23.1 million. For the business inclusion program contracts, $22.2 million. And the participation breakdown is as follows. For the older contracts, MBE 4.7%, WBE 7.2%, and OBE 2.9%, for a total of 14.8%. For the BIP contracts, MBE 16.6%, WBE 2.6%, SBE 11.3%, EBE 4.0%, DVBE 1.1%, OBE 3.7%, for a total of 39.2%. We have 10 solid waste biosolids contracts expiring. 7 of them will be renewed. The first one is with Waste Management El Sobrante Landfill, and Sanitation will be amending that contract to revise current rates, as well as exercising a 5-year renewal option contained in that contract. The next 4, Ecology Auto Parks, K&A Transportation, Mario's Trucking, and CR&R. Sanitation will be exercising a 5-year renewal option contained in that contract. Electronic Recyclers International, that's for e-waste disposal. LA San will be exercising a 3-year renewal option contained in that contract. And RNG Funuki Farms will also be exercising a 3-year renewal option contained in that contract. We have 29 wastewater contracts expiring within the next 9 months. 20 of them will be renewed. The first one is with Myron Electric Construction Corporation. We'll be exercising a 1-year renewal option contained in that contract. I'm not going to go one by one for the other 24, but they're, okay, I will if you want me to.
No, no.
Okay.
We got it.
Okay. They're the on-call contracts for wastewater, stormwater, and solid resources programs. But we'll be renewing those contracts, exercising a 5-year renewal option contained in those contracts. And we have 4 contracts that won't be renewed: AECOM, ABB, Hoffman Southwest, and National Plant Services. We have 20 contracts with subcontractor deviation concerns. Most of them are with our on-call contracts. The main reasons for the deviations include that sanitation revises the scope of services, and therefore the subcontractors won't be able to meet their goals. Also, subcontractors will be utilized in later phases of the project. And also, LA Sanitation performs the subcontractor services. And the last reason is that the contractor overestimated the amount of work to be given to the subcontractors.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Sanitation, Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I just wanted to make some observation. Thank you for an early copy of your report you sent to us prior to the meeting. And,
You're welcome.
And I just want to say generally, in our personal services contracting area, it really presents an opportunity for us to potentially really do a robust job in inclusion and business inclusion. I mean, the potential is really great here. We have an appreciation, I think, on the board to see, in fact, when we do have some growth and development around minority businesses and particularly around women businesses. And I've noticed in comparison with our challenge with regard to other areas of the need for business inclusion, such as in contracting, in construction, but that we've been able to realize a very clear progress in personal services. So my observation today is that we appreciate the progressiveness in which we see some growth and development, particularly in personal services contract. And thank you for your report.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Mr. Sisson? And then after Mr. Sisson, I've got Sheldon Grant. Go ahead.
Good morning. Ray Season from Bureau of Engineering, Project Wards Control Division. During our reporting period of October 1 to December 31, 2018, currently we have 110 active contracts. Total amount invoiced for this period is $10,616,567. We have 1 contract that will expire and will not be renewed. With regards to the invoice activities per outreach program, for the MBEWBE outreach program, amount invoice for this period is $3,780,368 for a total of 39 contracts, of which 34% were invoiced for the subs, for a total of $1,274,675. For the MBE participation, we have a total of 25% and dollar amount of $943,968. WBE of $128,974, which represents 3%, and OBE of $201,733, and that's for 5%. For the business inclusion program, we have a total of 57 contracts. Amount invoiced for this period is $4,400,108. Total invoice for the sub is 56%. Dollar amount of $2,443,804. For the MBE, total of 20%, that represent $890,385. for WBE, $427,627 and 10%. SBE, 25% for $1,096,844. EBE of $768,636 and 17%. DVBE of $14,930.3%, and OBE of $1,055,200, total of 24%. The last program that we have is the Disadvantaged Business Program for federally funded project. We have a total of 14 contracts. Amount invoiced for the reporting period of $2,436,090. Of which 52% were invoiced to the subs, DBE participation of 24%, and total of 582,266, OBE of 678,997 or 28%. The summary of tasks awarded for reporting period, we have a total of 17. Dollar amount of $7,218,053, of which 8 are under $100,000 for $593 and $491, and 9 tasks awarded over $100,000 for a total of $6,624 and $562. Tasks completed for the reporting period, a total of 61 for a dollar amount of $5,293,350. 7 were monitored for a total of $2,293,305, and 54 were exempt for a total of $3,045,000. As I mentioned, we have one contract that will expire, that expired and will be archived. That would be for SOMAS. Contracts expiring for next quarter, we have a total of 14, 4 of which is from the geotechnical engineering contract. They will be archived once they expire, and a total of 10 for street services. Currently, we're working on the amendment for that, and it should go to the board soon. Amended contracts executed during the last quarter or the reporting period, we have a total of 7. It was executed on October 30, 2018. Currently, all our negative deviation, we have a total of 28. All of our negative deviation are in the current early stage of the contract, and project manager anticipate to meet all the participation level of our consultant. Task awarded, we have a total of 17, again for a total of $7,218,053.
You gave us that summary.
I'm sorry?
You gave us that summary.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. So let me just say, Mr. Sisson, I don't know if you prepared this report or
Yes, we did.
Gary Lee Moore prepared this report. It is excellent. It is really helpful.
Thank you.
On the way it's laid out. And Sherry, yours is too. I mean, they're both great reports. But a couple things that I just want to highlight. But one, our bureaus are getting to WBE double digits in one category or the other, both reports. And MBEs are hitting 20-25%. That's on the substantive side. On the procedural side, the way that this data is laid out for us is immensely helpful. Dr. Williams thinks it's funny, but I think it is, he agrees. How about that? I think it's enormously helpful. And it really breaks down what we are doing in the personal services contract category at Bureau of Engineering. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Helpful, huh? Dr. Williams loves it. Yeah. See what you get when you come to the meetings. You get these bonuses. All right, thank you, Mr. Sisson, very much appreciated. Monica Frierson? Frierson. Thank you.
Frierson.
I was bound to miss one today. Go ahead.
Oh, that's good. Hi, my name is Monica, and I'm here for Bureau Street Services. I'm reporting on our personal service contracts. We have a total of 5 active contracts. We have the invoicing period goes through to December 2018, and we have $285,000 that we have already invoiced. We don't have any BIP participation in any of our contracts, but we do have 2 contracts, or 1 contract that's actually going to be expiring by the next 90 days, and that is our graffiti control services. And we're currently drafting the Venice Canal contract, and we plan to at least get ready to submit that one for your review probably by February, mid-February of this year.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ostrander? So Dr. Campos is going to get your written report that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the written report we turned into the office last week. I don't know.
Okay, so he'll find it, and Ms. Frierson, we will look and see if we have any, I don't have any questions from the oral report. If we have any from when we see the writing, we'll call you back up if you'll wait just a minute.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Our apologies for that. And Mr. Sheldon Grant from Contract Administration. Welcome back, sir.
Hello. Good morning, commissioners and executive staff. My name is Sheldon Gant, and I'm with the Office of Wage Standards, Bureau of Contract Administration. On May 6th, 2016, the board adopted and executed contracts with 12 consultants that were placed on our pre-qualified on-call list for various wage standards, enforcement, and implementation projects. During this reporting period, which covers the second quarter of this fiscal year, 2018 to 2019, the total paid invoice amount was $76,529.72. Our community-based organizations reached 7,690 employees and 9,217 employers by performing door-to-door direct community outreach to employees and employers throughout the city of Los Angeles. This concludes my presentation, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Did you hand in a documented report? Did you have? Oh, yeah, here it comes. Okay. So your report reflects involvement with us contracting with community-based organizations, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's why we see this document with regard to zero on all of the business entities, because you're really reporting on the community efforts that you've done instead, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Oh, this is what I'm okay. And then do we have a breakdown of some of the community, oh, yes, we do. Okay, everything I'm asking for, you have in a report. Thank you. So again, thank you so much for your report, and we appreciate it. And obviously, we always look in the community effort for the kind of diversity that involves as many communities as we possibly can with the resources that we have. And we realize we don't have enough resources for the whole city of Los Angeles, but we try to be inclusive as we can. And as I look to this community involvement, I'm trying to see, I love the diversity here, but I'm trying to figure out, do we have any folk in here from certain neighborhoods and sections of town that probably should be involved? And maybe I should talk to you about that off record, but there are a couple of communities that I don't really see inclusion, and maybe that's just because this quarter we hadn't had that work. So I do realize, is that what the case is?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Heidi, and I'm with the Bureau of Contract Administration. We do have more consultants
Sure.
on these,
Sure.
working on these task orders. They just
Exactly.
didn't submit invoices for that quarter.
Exactly, and I do recognize that these are just simply quarterly reports, and they only reflect the work done over certain past 3 months. And also, let me just add, while we're talking about this, that contract administration I'm talking about as a bureau is really our guiding light, and they are the leaders of providing a blueprint for not only the departments in the Public Works Department, but for all of the departments in the city. And time and over again, Bureau of Contract Administration has been the leader in terms of role modeling how we create diversity, and not only from your own staff, but you're able to do it as you converse with us numerous times throughout different projects we're working on. So I do want to acknowledge that, and I thank you for your report.
Thank you so much for your kind words.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, President. I think my questions got answered with a lot of the questions that Dr. Davis was asking, but is my understanding for clarity, and Sheldon, you spoke about this, is these folks helped us do door-to-door and one-on-one employee outreach on wage standards and enforcement? Is that right?
Yes. Minimum wage, paid sick leave, and fair chance initiative for hiring topics specifically.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And to Dr. Davis's point, the industry that we chose is because of this quarter, right? But there's going to be more, because I just kind of see a few. Yeah, exactly. There's some gaps in here of workers that
Yes.
probably should have been notified as well.
So for task order OWS 18-001, there were 7 consultants in total. Only 4 are listed here due to the invoice situation that Commissioner Davis had mentioned, and there were 5 consultants on the task order OWS 18-002.
Got it. And I remember a couple months ago, we approved some work on marketing through radio and through advertisement. Is this part of this work?
That was about a year ago for probably this time around 2018. So we'll be coming to you again soon for advertising through radio and newspapers and other media sources soon. This is not directly part of that. This is outreach that these consultants or community-based organizations do because they have direct relationships with these communities and industries. Advertising is going to be focusing on reaching a broader audience, maybe those who we didn't get to reach through this.
Got it. Yes, that's. Thank you so much. BCA is doing such a great job, especially on tailoring the outreach efforts and making sure our employees and employers understand our new laws. So thank you for that. Thank you for your report too, Sheldon.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. The oral report will be received. Thank you both. Agenda item number 2, above-ground facilities. Above-ground facilities, hardship waiver variance ordinance, Council District 11. This is adjacent to 7601 Westchester Parkway. Recommending that the board approve the request for a hardship waiver from the below-grade requirement of the AGF ordinance pursuant to LAMC, that's Municipal Code 62082A, and authorize Verizon to install a 57-inch high cabinet, 57 inches, in the public right-of-way adjacent to 7601 Westchester Parkway. Ms. Wang.
Good morning, Hui Huang with Bureau Engineering Central District. Verizon has submitted an application to the city. They have notified us that at this location, they will install telecommunication equipment to install or improve wireless cell service in the area. As part of the overall project, they are placing antenna equipment onto a Bureau street lighting street light pole to install antenna equipment onto it, deeming it a co-location on the streetlight pole. The co-location portion is exempt from the AGF ordinance requirements, and it is not part of this report being presented to you today. The other portion of the site does include a cabinet for electronic equipment, which is the one that will be discussed in the content of this report, as well as the city permit being issued by Bureau of Engineering. As part of this AGF application, the applicant has requested a hardship waiver from the below grade requirement of the cabinet. The initial application was received by us in July 2018. At the time of that initial application, the applicant, Verizon, sent first notices to adjoining, abutting, and across the street property owners about this application, and Council District 11 was notified. The site is located in the Los Angeles International Airport specific plan and also the Coastal Transportation Corridor specific plan. As part of the location, they have to place all installations below grade. If they cannot do that, then they have to justify it via hardship waiver request. They have to show that any installation below grade is technically or financially infeasible. The applicant has noted that the cabinet would house equipment that needs to be properly ventilated and easily accessible. The only alternative that they would have to place it below grade would be using a control environment vault. However, in order to place that type of installation, they would have to place 3 items above ground adjacent to the vault. One would be a electric meter pedestal so that they can house ventilation AC equipment. 2 would be 2 separate air vent stacks for the ventilation of the space. So essentially, going underground will result in 3 above ground obstructions in the public right of way. They have also noted that the cost from the cabinet, which is estimated at about $75,000, would in turn increase to about $350,000 if it was a control environment vault being placed underground. As far as city planning recommendations for Coastal Transportation Corridor specific plan, the administrator has no comments. For the second specific plan, the LAX specific plan, the administrator recommends approval of the hardship waiver. BOE has determined that the application satisfies the current requirements of the AGF ordinance. We sent out second notifications to the adjoining, abutting, and across the street property owners, notifying them of our determination, as well as opening the 14-day appeal period. Of the 2 properties notified, we received no responses. Page 4 of the report will show you a before and after photo of the proposed cabinet.
And the proposed cabinet would be that color of green, correct?
Yes, we did make them changes so that it would blend in better with the landscape.
It blends in
behind.
pretty well in the photo. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So at this point, we recommend that the board allow and adopt this report to allow Verizon to place the cabinet. I can take questions now.
Really just not even a question as much as it is just a statement of confirmation. Once that cabinet goes in place, it is put in place with ADA requirements satisfied in the surrounding area, correct?
Correct. The AGF ordinance mandates minimum pedestrian passage width, and this installation does satisfy it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Davis, is that? Oh, no. Okay. Okay. Thank you. No questions. I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number. We have a speaker card from Verizon representative. Is that just if we have questions? Okay, thank you. So no questions. So, Commissioner Garcia.
I just want to check in with BSO. I know Fabian Chan is here. Do you want to say something on this respect, or we're okay with this one? Got it. Thank you.
Satisfied, Commissioner Garcia? Okay, then I'll make a motion on agenda item number 2. Is there a second on 2? By Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, they're not going to second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 2. Any issue sending number 2 forthwith? We will send number 2 forthwith. Thank you, Ms. Wang. You're here on number 3 as well. Also in Council District 11, above ground facility variance, height and hardship waiver for 5900 Howard Hughes Parkway. Recommending that the board, let me just get to my sheet here. Recommending that the board approve the request for a variance from the height requirement of the above ground facility ordinance pursuant to Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 6208 V as in Victor, B as in boy, for the monopole. Secondly, approve the request for a hardship waiver from the below grade requirement of the AGF ordinance pursuant to LAMC 6208-2A for the monopole and 2-meter pedestal cabinets. Third, authorize Mobility and AT&T to install a 43-foot high wood monopole and 2 48-inch high, 4 feet, 48-inch high meter pedestal cabinets in the public right-of-way adjacent to 5900 Howard Hughes Parkway. Ms. Wang on number 3.
Hui Huang with Bureau Engineering Central District. To give you a little bit of history on this overall site, both Mobility and AT&T, which are two separate carriers, are proposing a telecommunication facility to improve their wireless cell service. There were previous applications to this installation. They came as two separate monopoles from the carriers. We had back and forth discussions with them to merge this into a single site to serve both their needs, and this is the result of that discussion. Overall, the initial conversation has started back in 2016 is what we have on record. Now, it's this single application. We are having Mobility as the lead as the applicant. We have received a request for the installation of the one monopole to house two separate antennas to provide service for two carriers, along with 2-meter pedestals to energize the service. The electric meters, because there are no electrical poles near the site, they are not able to do an overhead connection, therefore needing the electrical meter pedestals. And as far as the monopole, the antennas cannot operate on a height less than 5 feet and 6 inches, which is the height limit of the AGF ordinance, therefore needing the variance on the height limit as well. For the overall installation of the site, Mobility did send initial notification to the adjoining, abutting, and across the right-of-way property owners at the time of the application, and Council District 11 was also notified. For the variance on the height limit, the applicant needs to demonstrate that they are providing aesthetic measures that matches the requirements of the AGF ordinance, that there is no financially or technically acceptable alternative to the installation, and that Cultural Affairs Commission approves the design. In the area, there are no utility poles immediate to the site. However, there are tall trees. So to blend the installation, the applicant is proposing a wood material monopole. The two cabinets will be painted green to match with the landscaping at the ground level. We deem this satisfactory. As far as the invisibility, because of the height of the antennas, in order for them to function properly, it must be exceeding the height limits, so we deem that condition satisfactory. And aside from that, Cultural Affairs Commission did approve the design for the overall site in July 2018. Second request, the hardship waiver. The installation is in the Los Angeles Coastal Transportation Corridor specific plan. This is for the one monopole and the 2-meter pedestals. The antenna, same reason, it has to be at a certain height, cannot be placed underground, therefore for the need of the monopole, not being undergrounded. The electrical meter pedestals are actually exempt from placement below grade per the AGF ordinance. Another requirement from the ordinance is that because the installation is between 200 feet of a commercial zone lot, they have to outreach to the private property for installation on site. The one property is currently it has been developed with a multi-story residential building, and the applicant has noted that their request to place the monopole and facility on the private property was not granted. At this point, Bureau Engineering has determined that the application fulfills all the requirements of the AGF ordinance, and we did open a 14-day appeal period where we notify the adjoining, abutting, and across the right-of-way property owners, as well as Council District 11. Of the two properties that we notify for both the hardship waiver and the variance, we received no response. On page 6 and 7, you will see the before and after photo of the monopole installation and the 2 meter pedestals. At this point, we recommend that this project be approved as proposed, and I can take any questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you. We also have representatives from AT&T here as well if there are questions. Commissioner Cabello?
Thank you, President James. Is there a position CD11 has taken on this, the council office?
No, we conduct a formal request for a position. We have taken it as no comments means no position, which means that the project should move forward administratively as presented.
Okay, great. And do you know how many units are in the multi-family housing across the street? More or less, it looks really big.
It is really big. It's actually 2 blocks. It's the same development. If I had to guess, I would say somewhere between 50 and 100, but I don't have the information at hand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabello. Anything on street lighting, Commissioner Garcia?
That's exactly what I was referring. Fabian, anything on this matter?
Good morning, Fabian Chang, Bureau of Street Lighting. Just for the record, we did review this application that came from the Bureau of Engineering as far as the mobility request, and we concur with the findings.
Thank you, Fabian.
Thank you. Mr. Pellis or Mr. Cersey, we don't have any questions for you. Do you want to add anything? Okay. I'm going to make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3. Seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 3. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 3 forthwith? We will send number 3 forthwith. Have we cleared the desk other than 7 and 8?
That is correct. Those are the only 2 items.
Okay. What I would do, I want to take about a 60-second recess because I need to visit the back chamber here for about 60 seconds. And then anybody that is not street services, any of our Bureau representatives, feel free to head out. We'll just leave street services here for this tree removal item. I don't think it involves any other of our bureaus. So you're excused as well if you'd like to be. And then we'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, everybody, we're going to start in 15 seconds or so. Okay, going back to agenda item, well, let's take care of number 7 quickly. Number 7, tree removal, 10768 West Bellagio Road. Hang on, let me find the right. There's been a request to withdraw agenda item number 7. So on the speaker cards, we're going to combine 7 and 8 together. Agenda item number 8, status update on tree removal at 10768 West Bellagio Road. And there's a status update from the Bureau of Street Services. So we will start with the Bureau of Street Services, and then we're going to hear from our speakers, and we will start with the representatives from the applicant. So Bel Air Country Club, you can decide in what order you want to go. Same admonition for this that I have for both sides. For hearings like this, I don't really like to place a time limit, but I do ask that you not repeat yourself. And since I don't put a time limit on, you don't really need to say, I'll speak for the first 2 minutes, and then you finish the next sentence, and then, so decide how you want to do that for both sides. And then Dr. Williams, you can decide when you want to speak as well once we get to the public comment section. Since we extend you that courtesy. Mr. Hashkhalil from the Bureau of Street Services, let me just read the item fully into the record since it's been a while since it's been here. Requested tree removal, 10768 West Bellagio Road, recommending that the board first find that the tree removals are categorically exempt under Article 3, Section 1, Class 4, Category 3 of the city's Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and there is no substantial evidence the proposed project will have significant effect on the environment and is in compliance with California Environmental Quality Act, which is CEQA. Secondly, find that none of the exceptions to the use of a categorical exemption as set forth in Section 15300.2 of state CEQA guidelines apply. Third, specify that the Bureau of Street Services Urban Forestry Division located at 1149 South Broadway is custodian of the documents or other material that constitute the record of proceedings upon which the board's decision is based. And fourth, review and approve the request for a fee permit to remove 1 Coast live oak tree and 20 western sycamore trees. Replacements are required. That's agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 8 is a status update, so we're going to combine them. After we've heard from, at some point, after we've heard from the Bureau, and at some point during the speaker session, when I deem it appropriate, I will share for the public record the communication that I had with staff from Council District 5 regarding this item last night. We also have letters that have been submitted for the record. Mr. Hall will talk about his letter. We also have a letter from the president of the Bel Air Association that has been passed around to everyone as well. So, Mr. Hashkhalil, we'll start with you.
Good afternoon. Adel Hashkhalil, I'm the director of the Bureau of Street Services, as known soon to be Streets LA. Honored to put this issue in context, and I want to kind of help frame what we're trying to do in the city. We are under the leadership of the mayor and the board, and I know the board back in January held a hearing on the tree issues, and a motion has been adopted by the board to really help us work towards protecting trees in a very documented, processed way, and to work on greening the city and expanding the work that we're doing to protect the urban forest, but also expand it. And as we discussed yesterday, the mayor at the Verde Exchange talked about is cooling the city and making the city a safe place for all of us. Trees are an integral part of everything we do, and the commitment that we have at Street Services and at the city is to work hard to protect trees and to expand the planting of trees. We have the highest professional in Street Services, professionals that are very proud. Most of them are arborists by certification. Last 2 weeks ago, we hired 20 new tree surgeons to increase the trimming and protection and inspection of trees. And we continue to add more resources to help us manage our urban forest as a whole. There is a report recently issued through city plans that was heard at the board here, talks about the future and the importance of trees. However, there is also a side of protecting and preserving trees that we cannot forget. A lot of trees get diseased and sick, and if they're not taken care of in a timely manner, they can create a bigger issue. It's like a disease in the human body. A small tumor can be treated quickly, will save the life of the person. Similarly, a tree within a body of many trees, if it's not dealt with immediately, can really kill the family of trees and the body. So to me, the timing of removing diseased trees is critical. And I want to, in the discussion here today, you will hear how important that is. So I want to make sure that we put it in the context is we are all working towards saving and preserving trees. But sick trees cannot be kept around because they will infect other healthy trees. And that we'll hear that from our chief arborist, Tim Tyson and his team, talking about what they've done. So I want to make sure that we have a commitment under the leadership of the board, Commissioner James, but also Commissioner Cabello, working with the community advisory group and committee on trees and on forest. We're working hard on trying to deal with all these issues. There's a lot of motion at council that are directing us to look at procedures, processes, many things that we're working through. So I want to make sure that we put it in this context. We are here committed to preserving trees and working on trees, but we cannot forget that not taking care of a tree is actually removing a dead or diseased tree, is taking care of other trees. With that, I want to just return it back, President James, and have Tim Tyson provide us a little more information at your request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hoshkhalil. Mr. Tyson, from our Bureau of Street Services, I see that it's going to take a little time to move to Streets LA, but as you have to train your brain. Although I love the new logo. And what is it? You can't say street without the word tree, right?
Yeah.
How about that? Go ahead.
That's a good thing. It's a
There you
good
go.
thing.
I like to take credit for that, but I'm sure I'm not the one who came
Remember, we have to have all phases of trees. New trees, newly planted trees, middle-aged trees, and elderly trees. If we don't have all, then somewhere in between we're going to run out.
So go ahead, Mr. Tyson. Let us, just really for us, and we have one new member since this saga at the Bel Air Country Club began in the tree chapter. So you can provide some summary for the board as well as for the oral record for anyone that might listen in for the first time.
Absolutely. President James, Commissioners, City Attorney, Executive Officer, and Bureau of Street Services Director. Some time ago, we were here to hear this, and it got stalled. The Bel Air Country Club recently renovated its existing 18-hole golf course that encompasses approximately 10 acres located at 10768 West Bellagio Road. The golf course renovation included extensive grading and soil preparation needed for drainage. Mr. Chris Kallstrand, property owner's authorized representative, retained the services of Dudek and Douglas Duncanson, certified arborist and pest control advisor, to produce a protected tree report, which was submitted to the Bureau of Street Services, Streets LA. The protected tree report indicated that the property contained 112 protected trees, a minority of which were affected by the invasive shot-hole borer and in a state of decline. The ISHB invasive shot-hole borer is an invasive wood-boring beetle that infects the host tree with a fungus that can interrupt the transport of water and nutrients, causing branch dieback, declining the tree's health and including eventual mortality. The invasive shot-hole borer can fly from tree to tree, causing further infections and tree loss. Prompt removal of infected trees can potentially prevent the infection spreading to nearby healthy trees. A Streets LA arborist inspected the location on October 18, 2017 and verified that the trees slated for removal were infested with the invasive shot-hole borer and in decline. The arborist concurred with the findings in the protected tree report. Subsequent to this initial inspection, the property owner removed the diseased trees prior to the board's issuance of a protected tree removal permit. The property owner stated that the infected trees were planted and thus should not be considered native trees. And in our ordinance, that is true. The trees have to be naturally occurring to be protected. A photo of the site during construction of the original golf course was provided as evidence that the current trees were planted during construction. However, the date of the photo could not be independently authenticated by Streets LA. The removed protected trees were identified as number 1, number 433, Coast Live Oak, and 17, numbered 1, 2, 4, 7, 17, 27, 28, 33, 294, 298, 301, 312, 314, 379, 452, 453, and 463, Western Sycamores. The removed trees measured from 9 to 50 inches in diameter and were approximately 12 to 70 feet in height. A Streets LA arborist performed a follow-up inspection of the site on November 20th, 2018. The inspection verified the planting of 108 replacement trees, a ratio significantly exceeding the board's required 4-to-1 ratio. The newly planted trees are as follows: Coast Live Oak, 15-gallon size, 21 trees; 24-inch box size, 12 trees; 36-inch box size, 5 trees; and 48-inch box size, 28 trees; and 60-inch box size, 17 trees. The Western Sycamores were replaced 25 trees of 60-inch box size.
So just to put that, sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Tyson, but we don't see 60-inch box. That's a 5-foot diameter box. When we do tree replacements at the board, I don't recall seeing 60-inch box trees often.
Not very. We've had a couple where we've made some
Had
special.
a few, yeah. But that, describe the 60-inch box tree, which is a total of 42 here. If you add the 17 plus the 25, compared, well, I mean.
Well, rather than a 24-inch box size tree, which I could do this to, rather than a 30-foot tall tree that's 6 to 8 inches in diameter, it's already on its way to becoming a mature tree.
Is it your position that the bigger the box, the better?
It depends on where you're planting.
Okay.
Obviously,
which makes sense.
Right.
For this site.
The large trees are perfect.
Okay, go
because
ahead.
it's an open site, it's irrigated, everything. So
Okay, go ahead.
the property owner removed 18 protected trees due to disease infestation. Prior to receiving...
Hold on 1 minute. I'm trying to add the total number of trees. 21 and 12 is 33, and 5 is 38, and 28 is 66, and 17, 108. Okay, well, I was going to try and get there the hard way, but okay, 108. See if I would have gotten there. All right, go ahead.
You had me worried for a second. I was going to have to add them myself.
Yeah. I was on track, but go ahead.
The property owner removed 18 protected trees due to disease infestation prior to receiving the protected tree removal permit from the board. The potential spread of insect-borne diseases was a factor in the timing of the removals. The tree replacements appeared to be in good condition and exceed the board's 4-to-1 tree replacement policy for protected trees. Under section 46.02B of the Los Angeles Municipal Code, it states the board may grant a permit for removal or relocation of a protected tree if the protected tree shows a decline from a condition of normal health and vigor, and restoration through appropriate and economically reasonable preservation procedures and practices is not advisable. Since Streets LA would have recommended that the board grant a removal permit due to the disease infestation, and Streets LA would have required a smaller quantity of replacement trees than what was planted, Streets LA recommends no corrective action or no further action at this time needs to be taken.
Would you read that part again?
Since Streets LA would have recommended that the board grant a removal permit, as we came here to try to get that permit granted by you some months ago.
Was the first, this is just
Yes,
trying to remember, did the council office make the first request for the continuance?
that's correct.
Okay.
They wanted to do a further study and reach
On
out
the
to...
Shot Hole Bore.
Right, reach out to UC Riverside, which I brought up the fact
Yeah.
that... Yeah, go ahead.
I remember the council office wanted the continuance because they wanted to check into the infectious nature of the disease at least.
And treatment.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so, and they had their expert come in, who's the leading expert in the Prolificus shut hole bore. The trees were tested. They had been impacted by fusarium. A couple of trees were actually already dead. They were in many different stages of being impacted by the invasive shot hole borer. New, the invasive shot hole borer spreads every 40 days.
Okay.
So it's a very quick, goes in the tree, lays the larvae, the pupa stage, all these things happen. In 40 days, it's flying again. So that's why this is such a, this isn't like a root fungus on a tree where the tree stands here and has a root fungus and only that tree's infected. When these beetles fly, they go right to the next tree or the next tree or the next tree, and this is not an isolated area. This has many protected trees on it. So the fear is the spreading of the disease and more trees, succumbing to this. So they may talk about you can treat them. You can only treat trees usually if they're caught in the very beginning stages of this. These trees weren't caught in the beginning stages. They were caught in the middle and where it was already happening. Some had already died. There is one definite conclusion of for now, treatment's questionable, but removal is definite. And if you have any questions.
No, I don't. So let's go. Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Thank you, Mr. Haj Khalil. Let's go to, I'll let him go after we hear from everybody. Bel Air Country Club and Pacific Crest Consultants. I've got Adam and Chris, right?
Correct, yeah, I apologize.
I've also got Justin.
Right, Justin's here just to, if there's any questions that he might be able to answer.
Okay, so let me just be clear. So for all the speaker cards I have for your side of the docket,
just two of us.
It's just the two of you.
Yes.
So I can put these aside, but if we have additional questions.
Then, yeah, that Justin might specifically be able to answer. We
Go ahead,
that.
sir.
And I apologize for I gave some for 7 and some for 8 just in case. To cover my
That's okay, everybody did. That's not your fault, it's ours. We just needed to notice the agenda, notice what we were doing as best we could.
Understood. Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Chris Parker. I'm from Pacific Crest Consultants. Adam Fannin, the General Manager of the Bel Air Country Club, will be speaking after me. And as I mentioned, Justin, who's the Site Project Manager, is available for any additional questions that you may have. I will keep my comments brief because I've been trained to keep the 2 minutes. So hopefully I will succeed and still get points across.
You can have more time if you need it.
Thank you very
Go
much.
ahead.
Since we were last here, a lot of things have happened in a very positive way. That extra time has allowed us to provide additional information and answer questions to Street LA's staff at the Urban Forestries staff, and we think that has resulted in an update that Mr. Tyson just presented that is very strong. We've also provided site visits for street services staff, urban forestry staff, and community leaders so that they understand what happened and what's going on and what the plan is for the future. We're very Happy to point out that we have, again, since we last were here, received support from hundreds of the homeowners in the immediate area in the form of the letter that Commissioner James just mentioned. That wasn't just the president signing a letter, a personal letter. That was him speaking for the entire Bel Air Association and their support of what has been done. Correct.
It's this letter that was passed out to us?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Also, my client and his representative, other representative, have had a chance to meet with the one person who remains unsatisfied multiple times, and we thought that we were getting to a good place. I'll let him talk about it more, but we're down to that one last person. So we have reviewed the latest staff reports, and we agree with the facts as stated both verbally and in the report that Mr. Tyson just gave. And we also accept its conclusions. And we are here to urge the board, as was stated, to find that there is no reason for penalties and to allow the club to go back to concentrating on maintaining and preserving its treescape, and we can move forward from this day. Thank you.
Thank you. You are Mr. Fannin?
Yes, Adam
Okay.
Fannin, the
Hi.
General Manager and CEO of Bel Air Country Club. So, Mr. President, Commissioners, thank you for your time. The reason that the trees were removed were twofold. One, obviously, the shot hole borer infestation, and also safety. The two trees that were mentioned were dead, already had large limb loss. Not all of our golfers at Bel Air Country Club hit it down the middle. They hit it from side to side in those trees, and a very dangerous situation for residents of Bel Air and our members. Bel Air has been around for almost 100 years, one of the oldest and certainly the largest property owner in Bel Air, almost 140, a little over 140 acres in total in all parcels. We have opened our doors to many community leaders, have had many meetings with residents, with city council, had them out to the club. Obviously, Streets LA has been out several times. I'm happy to report today that all 108 trees that were planted are thriving in the environment that they are in. We have a very sophisticated irrigation system that was installed during the restoration to maintain these. We have a dedicated staff of 38 employees, full-time employees on our agronomic team to maintain the property and the well-being of those trees. It is certainly in our interest to keep these trees very healthy for a myriad of reasons. Again, those 108 trees doing great. Our golf course superintendent, Justin DePippo, his job depends on those trees staying alive. So we have a keen interest in keeping those trees alive, and if they were to die, we would certainly want to replace them. They're strategic in nature. They're preserving the golf course. The project was not just a renovation, it was a restoration. We tried very hard to restore the golf course back to its original design of 1925. And certainly don't want to take up too much more time, but I believe that letter from Mr. Dan Love, the president of the Bel Air Association, kind of sums up the outreach that we have made to open the club's doors to meet with anyone that had concerns about the trees that were removed, the trees that were installed, and how we're going to continue to maintain them moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from Mr. Fannin before we go to Mr. Hall? Dr. Williams, do you want to go now or do you want to wait till after Mr. Hall? Okay. Mr. Hall and Ms. Whitford, you both have in cards. You can, you've been here before? You know the drill?
Sure thing. Jamie Hall with Channel Law Group on behalf of Dr. Linda Whitford. Good afternoon. I'm going to get into the specific recommendation of staff. They're not asking you to approve the removal of a tree removal permit. They're asking you to withdraw the item and excuse the applicant from the requirement to obtain a tree removal permit. There is no legal justification for that. the tree ordinance itself, the protected tree ordinance, does say that the board may grant, they may find one of the justifications for granting a permit is the fact that a tree is in decline, diseased. That's something for you to think about. If substantial evidence supports that, you can grant the permit. That's not what you're being asked to do today. You're essentially being asked to exempt the applicant from the requirement to obtain a tree removal permit. There are 3 specific exemptions listed in the protected tree ordinance. This is not one of them. The issue of a tree being diseased is something that can be used as a justification for the issuance of a tree removal permit. So the next question becomes, why would that matter? Wouldn't that just be an exercise in paperwork, Mr. Hall? I am expecting this question to come to me. And the answer is no. Because with the issuance of the tree removal permit comes the ability of the board to condition the removal, the issuance of the permit on a bond in case the trees die, on inspection, on potentially the requirement that they be irrigated. The whole point of these mitigation trees is that they provide mitigation for all the years going forward. Right now, all we have is a promise. We have a promise from the board, the club, saying, we promise, if they die, we'll replace them. We promise that we're going to water them, and we're not going to decide on year 4 or 5 that we don't like them, or they're in the way, or they grew too tall, or one of our prominent members doesn't like that particular tree. That's not enough. And that's why, and so like the issue of whether or not they're diseased is a red herring. The issue here is whether or not you should excuse the applicant from the requirement to obtain a tree removal permit. And there is ample analogous situations where the city requires this. So, for example, if you do some illegal grading on your property, the city will issue an order to comply. They say, stop doing that and go get the permit. Or if you construct an illegal addition to your house, they'll issue an order to comply. And they'll say, stop doing that and go get the permit. And the reason why we do that is we want to make sure that that addition, that illegal addition, complies with the code, and that it is that there's not a danger to public health, safety, and welfare. We need the same assurance here. And so this is setting a bad precedent on a going forward basis when we have already the city acknowledging that they want to do better when it comes to protecting our trees. So let's make that effort to do better now. I don't care what you've done in the past. We know that that is an inadequate situation. Illegal removals require tree removal permits, and they require all those other things associated with the removals. Bond, inspection, and a requirement that the trees be maintained in perpetuity. So that's what I really want you to think about today as you're considering this application. Do not withdraw the application and get to whether or not a tree removal permit is required. I'm going to go ahead and step down, but that's the meat of our argument here. We're not going to talk about disease. We're going to talk about whether or not the applicant should be excused from the requirement to obtain a permit.
Does that mean Ms. Whitford's next? Okay.
Good afternoon, Linda Whitford, resident of Bel Air. What actually happened here? The Bel Air Country Club broke the law, cut down 18 protected trees without a permit, and thought they were going to get away with it. Last year, I then brought to the board's attention the problems in the agenda item. The country club, after a number of continuances, finally admitted that they had cut down the trees without a permit. They fabricated a story and paid their consultants to write in support of that story. It's important to put into the record that cutting down trees solely for PSHB infestation is not best management practices and is contrary to expert opinion and the science. Trees throughout Bel Air have PSHB infestation and are being maintained and treated, and researchers are finding that some infested trees are actually spontaneously recovering. You are putting into the public record that the Los Angeles Urban Forestry Division and Board of Public Works believe that cutting down trees is how you manage them for PSHB. This is simply wrong and flies in the face of expert opinion. A careful reading of the documents in your agenda packet shows the Bel Air Country Club's story to be the deceitful concoction that it is. They and their consultants have lied from the beginning of their project when their expediters submitted their grading application and stated that there were no protected trees on site, and then later admitted to 3 protected trees in their environmental document before applying to Urban Forestry Division to remove 23 protected trees. How are you going to square this business as usual lack of enforcement with your proclamations of a new order and 2019 as the year of the tree in response to the highly embarrassing DUDEC report on the city's urban forestry practices? Have you decided that you'll change your practices for street trees but not for protected trees? Since 90% of the city's urban forest is on private land, this lack of enforcement heralds a failure before you're even out of the gate. Giving free passes to violators only encourages more of the same. It literally makes no sense. This is not the way to begin on the path to protecting our urban forest.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is that it from your side? Let me respond by saying a few things first, and then I have some questions. Dr. Williams, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Dr. Tom Williams, Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community, resident in Culver City, but interested in this one because when you have so many sycamores together, it's called a grove. It's not just a single individual. For this particular project, there's a question as to, will they be subject to borers again? Did they remove all of the infected trees before? What's going to go forward? And in fact, one of the questions I had was, what is the issue? What's the resolution that you're considering, that you're getting an update on? I don't see anything in the way of a permit. So I would definitely agree. You need a permit, and they need a 3-year monitoring program for water condition and the presence or absence of the borer and the fungi. So we're quite concerned regarding this particular one because sycamores are very unusual. They require very unusual ground conditions. Walnuts, almost anywhere. Oaks, many places. Sycamores, very restricted. So we're quite concerned about having a real mitigation, monitoring, and reporting plan for this project going forward. And that's best covered in a permit. So let's get a permit. Elsewise, we'll be in judicial review. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Let me start with, and I think either Mr. Parker or Mr. Fannin, I'm going to start with you on questions before I get to some of my thoughts. But I do want to put in the record my conversation with the council office last night. I was contacted by 2 members of the council office, and I ended up speaking with the chief of staff, which would not be a surprise to anyone. The council office recommends to the board that the Board of Public Works follow the suggestion of the Bureau of Street Services, Streets LA, in taking no further action on this item and agreeing with the withdrawal of agenda item number 7. That's the record of the council office. The question I have for you, and I can't remember which one of you, you referenced, I think it was you, Mr. Parker, when you were talking about the work that you were doing in communications with the Bel Air Association, you referenced one community member. Was that you that you could not get agreement from? Was that you?
That was me. And
Okay.
That was the woman who just spoke.
Okay, so that's Dr. We all have names here, and so that's Dr. Whitford.
Yes.
Okay. And you had indicated to me that you had had a number of communications with Dr. Whitford?
That would be Adam.
Yes, we've had at a minimum, beyond several phone calls, 3 in-person meetings at the country club, including a several-hour tour of the entire property.
Okay. Now, you have success with the Bel Air Association. I don't know if she's a member of that or not, but you have success with the Bel Air Association. You don't have success, obviously, in communicating with her based on what you said and based on her statements today. What could you share the subject of the communication? Were there attempts to reach a resolution, for lack of a better term? If that's even...
Absolutely there were. Several attempts. We had made great progress. Unfortunately, the last attempt that was made by Dr. Whitford through Mr. Hall was simply unacceptable to the club. The club will still, as we do with every resident in Bel Air, like I said, we've been there for 100 years. We plan on being there indefinitely. We have continual relationships with every homeowner in Bel Air. So we'd be happy to continue those discussions and to continue working with her. But unfortunately, the demands were simply egregious and unacceptable.
So when you say demands, I'm thinking mitigation, and I may be wrong in that, but you've referenced, and Street Services, Streets LA has referenced mitigation measures, including the 108 trees, the watering plan, monitoring the health of the trees, and all of that. What are the demands that you're referencing, to use your term?
Well, the leading compromise was there is an association called Audubon International. Many of you are familiar with it, mainly birds. They actually have a golf course division in the United States, and they wanted the club to become certified by Audubon. Okay, we'd be happy to look in that and make our best effort to become certified. They wanted us to enter into a legal binding agreement that we would be certified. This is a very detailed, complex process. The minimum it takes is 6 months. It can take up to 3 years to find out if you can even become certified. As the CEO and representative of the club, there was no way I was going to enter into a legal agreement based on a third party's perception of the program we were operating at the club. So we came up with, well, if that's the case and you cannot get certified at the end of this, then we need a plan B. And the plan B was the sticking point. It was a donation to a charity.
Okay.
Of their choice, which didn't, for no rhyme or reason, pertain to anything that we were doing at the club.
Okay, so that was my next question. So in your opinion, it wasn't related to mitigation measures that are planting 108 trees, planting healthy trees, planting mature trees, monitoring the trees, all that?
No, not at all.
Okay. I think that, and there's no, you feel like that you're at an impasse?
At this time, yes.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Tyson, There was reference in Dr. Whitford's statements about expert opinion on the shot hole bore. And I know I'm simplifying the term. There are acronyms. There's a longer term, but we can all remember that one. The council office, my recollection, as we discussed a moment ago, when the council office first asked for the continuance, it was to
They wanted to get a hold of someone at UC Riverside to go out and verify. that
Riverside, yeah.
That's what they wanted.
and there was more work done on the shot hole bore issue of these trees, correct?
Well, I sent out an inspector before the trees they ended up being removed, but we took photos of the tree trunks to show that they had in excess of 50 hits. They look at a tree and they say if it's got 25 or less hits, it's treatable. If it's got 50 or more, it could be maybe not. Or if it's got 150 and it's really been, impacted. Because when the beetle flies out, some don't go. They stay and they keep, in the tree, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And so when the water is clogged up and it can't reach the tops of the trees start dying back. And we have photos of the trees where they had gone in and cut off parts of the trees to try to keep them for as long as they could, but that's what they were talking about, not being safe with people walking under them and this kind of thing.
Okay. Regarding the issue of the infectious nature of the disease, and the fact that I believe you said today that you gave a 40-day period to it.
Correct. From the time the beetle enters the tree, it's only 40 days before the new ones are flying out to reinfest. So you could have literally 9 infestations in 1 year.
Getting to a little bit beyond just this tree removal, but Dr. Whitford, and I'm going to get to some of her points in a moment, but referenced that the city's process in dealing with shot hole bore is to remove trees when that should not be the first step in, and I may be putting words in her mouth on the first step part, but the first step in a defense mechanism for the shot hole bore. What would you say in response to that?
We do go out. We follow the UC Riverside little flyer they have that you follow what to do and all these different things. So we look at the trees and we see where they are in that state of being infected. In other words, how many hits do they have on them and this kind of thing. We do talk to the constituents and say, you can treat these trees. There's no guarantee. You could go and have somebody come in, and it's called an applicator, and they put systemic injections around the base of the tree, and this is something you'd have to pay over and over and over and over and over and over and over constantly to kill the infection that's in the tree, which is the Fusarium bacteria. But it's the beetle that you got to catch from going to the next tree and the next tree and the next tree. So you got 2 things going on.
Okay. When you deal with shot hole bore, is the first step that the city takes is to grant a tree removal permit?
If the applicant isn't interested in doing any kind of injections to the tree, this, that, and the other, which we suggest, then yes, because eventually the tree is going to become something that will move to the next trees in the area.
It's going to become a carrier in essence.
It's a host.
The host.
Yep.
Right. But you do attempt to work with the owner of, if it's on private property.
Yes.
What about a street tree?
We haven't really run across that many, but I've had a couple where I've even had the council office call and say they want those trees out right away, so there's no further. In the very beginning stages of this, when it first came about, they were being removed like that, just removed, right? So now we know that they can be treated. We ask the clients and this and that, and if they would be willing to do that, and most are not. They want to get the tree out.
So for street trees, Mr. Haj Khalil, what I would recommend, to the extent we have shot hole bore issues on street trees, there should be before any tree removal permit request comes, please provide a narrative that indicates the work that was done in an attempt, and this I think is consistent with the motion that the board passed earlier this month, regarding an assessment of the level of infestation of shot hole borer in the instance that the tree might be able to be treated rather than removed. Regarding what you're doing with private property issues, I'm open to suggestion at a later time on how you deal with those property owners, but right now it sounds like you're doing what you can in that respect.
Absolutely. And with the golf course, as I stated earlier, and before this time, the trees were all in different states of this infection being caused by the shot hole borer. You had completely dead ones, you had ones that had crown dieback that had been trimmed off and are dying more. So it had been there 6, 7, 8 months, and it's moving through its course.
Okay. Thank you. On a few other items, I recognize that Mr. Hall didn't want to talk about, said we're not here to talk about disease. And for his argument, he may not want to talk about disease, but the disease of the trees is part of the whole picture here.
That is correct.
And we have to look at the whole picture. It may not be convenient for one side or the other, but we have to look at the whole picture. The other issue that I heard a couple of times from the protesters was that we don't want to talk about the past, was something that was mentioned, but they wanted to reference precedent, and they wanted to look going forward. And with one thing that I'm always going to do is to defend the actions of this board unless I feel like we've made a mistake on any particular item. And this reference and just the nature of the description of our work by Dr. Whitford, I thought was unfortunate. There's one of the things that we end up with is oftentimes a scenario such as perhaps this one, although there may be a way to avoid it that I'll get to in a minute, where the city ends up being sued one way or the other. If we do A, we're going to get sued. If we do by the opponent to that. So if we do B, we get sued by the opponent to that. This may be one of those situations. I don't know. I'm going to see if we can avoid it. But the one characterization of the board that I would say is unfortunate, it may be uninformed, but at least unfortunate, is, and it doesn't take long to read a few stories in the Los Angeles Times, and there were other stories in the community in West LA as well regarding Sullivan Canyon, when this board, at the recommendation of this Bureau of Street Services, and I don't recall if Mr. Hall spoke during the Sullivan Canyon hearings or not, but this board took what has been described by that private property owner as drastic action when, because of illegal tree removals, the board in effect caused the cessation of building permits such that the city was sued in that aspect. And that lawsuit still exists. It has been written about a number of times. It was pursuant to an ordinance that enabled the city to take that action if it deemed that action appropriate under the circumstances that the board faced. The board made the unanimous determination that that was the appropriate thing to do at that time. This board in this administration has demonstrated that it will take drastic action as described by some, as permitted by the ordinance, that fortunately doesn't have to happen often, to send a message, if necessary, to the development community and the entire community that you cannot illegally remove trees in the city of Los Angeles without the potential for penalty under the circumstances in which you're operating. In this instance, we have another circumstance where trees were removed without a permit, likely illegally. But this circumstance is starkly in contrast from the circumstance that happened with Sullivan Canyon. I'm not going to get into the details of the Sullivan Canyon hearings. If anybody interested, you can read all about it in the LA Times and the LA Weekly and the neighborhood papers. There's a lot of ink that's been spilled on that one, and it continues. But on this, even though we've covered this in the first hearing, I do think it would be helpful from either Mr. Parker or Mr. Fannin or Justin, I don't remember your last name, either one of you, to address for the record why the tree removals without the permit. Why did that happen? Because in this instance, even with that occurring, we have a Street Services Bureau saying no further action should occur. The same Street Services Bureau that in Sullivan Canyon implemented the nuclear option. We have an instance where the community here in the Bel Air Association supports what Street Services is recommending. Now, the community in Sullivan Canyon did too, for a different outcome. We have a circumstance here where the council office, Council District 5, supports the recommendation of Street Services. Well, that was the same thing in CD 11 too, but for a completely different outcome. So I would like to hear from Mr. Parker, Mr. Fannin, or Mr. Justin on Mr. DePippo, either one of you, on a summary, if you could kind of re-explain for us. And I would note that we do have a new board member that was not here for the original hearing to get the benefit of hearing directly from you on it. And I think it would help the record as well.
Certainly. Adam Fannin, again, President, or GM and CEO of the Bel Air Country Club. It was actually a pretty simple process for us in our decision making. Obviously, it's a safety issue. Obviously, shot hole bores had been on our property for several months, if not years, and we're progressing throughout. We deemed it an emergency situation. We actually changed project managers and golf course superintendents during the middle of our project in December of 17. Our new superintendent, Mr. Justin DePippo, had just gone through a very similar project at another golf course in the city of Los Angeles and came in and said, well, we went through this, and actually if you look, we shouldn't have even filed for the tree permit in the first place. These are non-native trees. We did a ton of research. We got aerial photos, historical photos through UCLA and our own archives, and took a look and worked with our consultants on that. And we deemed, and now have spent a lot of time and effort and energy from a lot of us through that decision, we made the determination that they were non-native trees.
And that's based on the photos from from when and what did they show? They
Well-
were construction photos from prior years?
From
They showed the planting of the trees?
The original site
Yes.
photos of Bel Air, the
Yes.
original golf course photos from the 1920s and 1930s.
I've read the board report, I know what it
Yes.
says, but I'm
Yes.
making an oral report
Yes.
here, and I know that we couldn't independently confirm that date, but go ahead.
Yes, from those original photos. And we went through extensive, in order to restore the golf course, we searched through hundreds of photos to try to get the golf course just perfect. We hired one of the preeminent, most international golf course designers, Tom Doak, to come and restore the golf course back to the Bell and George Thomas originals from 1925. So we had a myriad of photos that we looked at, and those trees were not on property in the 20s and 30s.
Mr. Jordan, if the trees were planted, if they were not there in the 20s and 30s, and I know that we can't independently, that we haven't been able to independently confirm the date, although I don't know, Mr. Parker may be offering something, I don't know, but does then the applicant, are they absolved of the requirement for a tree removal permit if they are not protected trees under the ordinance?
Yes, I'm trying to find the exact code language. I've not seen it here, but trees that are planted as part of a tree planting program, so if they're planted, they're not naturally occurring, then those trees are not protected, even if they happen to be one of the species that we would otherwise protect.
Okay, but on their private property, can they just remove them then without a tree removal permit?
Yeah, if a tree is not protected, either because it's not a protected tree species or it's a protected tree species, but they planted it, so it was planted as part of a tree planting program, then they can remove the tree without a permit from the Board of Public Works.
Okay, and can they remove 18 of them, or 28 of them, or 38 of them?
So, yes. I mean, there may be situations when it's part of a larger project and that project has some type of other CEQA thing, but in terms of the permits that would be required from the Board of Public Works, whether it's one non-protected tree or 100 non-protected tree on their private property, they simply don't need a permit from the Board of Public Works.
Okay. I've got some more questions, but Dr. Williams, I'm sorry. Commissioner Cabello.
Thank you, President James. I want to verify for the record, Streets LA, that you weren't able to verify the date of the picture submitted by Bel Air Country Club. Is that correct? Or Mr. Tyson?
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct. Some of the trees could have been planted. Some of the trees could have been naturally occurring. If you look at the sizes of the trees that were removed, now we go back 100 years back, the trees, some of them would have been a lot bigger than the ones that were removed. So, and in the ordinance...
Would that lead them to believe that they're planted?
Well, in other words, some of them could be planted and some of them could have been naturally occurring. We don't have a perfect on it. So that's why we came to board to get the permit, because there was no guarantee. There's no planting plan that was given to us from 1925. An aerial photo of everything being removed on the face of the grounds, and then now it's got trees all over it and grass and all this and that, but that's through a course of 100 years. That's 95 years. Now I want to read something to you. Under in 177404, protected tree. Any of the following Southern California native tree species which measure 4 inches or more in cumulative diameter, 4 1/2 feet above the ground level at base of the tree. Then it mentions which species. Then it goes down to say, this definition shall not include any tree grown or held for sale by a licensed nursery or trees planted or grown as part of a tree planting program.
Would you read that again?
This is where it comes to the decision whether it was planted or not, naturally occurring or okay. Section 2, Section 1702 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code is amended by deleting the paragraph defining oak tree in Section 1702 and adding the following paragraph to read. Protected tree, any of the following Southern California native tree species which measures 4 inches or more in cumulative diameter, 4 1/2 feet above the ground level at the base of the tree. A, oak tree. B, Southern California black walnut. C, western sycamore. D, California bay. This definition shall not include any tree grown or held for sale by a licensed nursery, or trees planted or grown as part of a tree planting program. Thus, that's why we asked for tree planting plans of when the trees were planted, which were not able to be produced.
Okay.
If I may? Yes. I'm sorry, for Mr. Fannin. So was it the order of events that you did, because Mr. DePippo had this previous experience at another golf club in the city of Los Angeles, you found photos, is this the correct order of events? You did not think you needed a permit, or you felt it was an emergency, and then you did your research and didn't feel you needed a permit?
No, we had initially applied for at the start of the project, what all types of permits. We don't do a lot of projects at the Bel Air Country Club. This is the first time we've done anything of this scope in 90 years. So we need to go out and try to secure every type of permit that we think we're going to need. The tree permit was one of those that we applied for. That was, I'm guessing, testing my recollection a little bit, but August, September of 17. Then the transition between our former superintendent, Mr. DePippo, happened in December. That is when the emergency had already happened. We had already hired DUDEC, who came out and said, "You've got a problem here." And the problem is growing, and it's getting worse. We had limbs that were down. They showed us one tree that was entirely rotted out, a very large tree, completely rotted out. So they were simultaneous at the same time. That's when we started. We had aerials at the time, but we weren't aware of the clause that Mr. Tyson just read at that time until Justin came in and said, well, under this clause, we were able to go ahead and remove those trees at this previous property. So that's when we went, and again, went back to those photos. Additionally, I went back through our records at the club and our archives to try to find any details of planting plans. Unfortunately, I was not able to find one. What I was able to find were minutes of our board back in, I believe it was 1963, when they were building Century City. And there was the removal and relocation of dozens of sycamores from Century City to the Bel Air Country Club. Now, I don't know where those were relocated to. It just makes sense that that's where they were probably relocated to in the areas that we're discussing, and they were removed. So that, in coordination with the emergency that we had going on, and honestly feeling that we did not need the permit, and took the trees down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Mr. Jordan, what is, I'm not concerned, frankly, that that the board doesn't have that the board has not sent a message to the development community and to private industry that if you illegally remove trees, we will do nothing. The highly publicized Sullivan Canyon case demonstrates clearly otherwise, and it's recent. What is the effect, one way or the other, of not granting a permit of withdrawal and not taking further action, which is the suggestion of the board, or of granting a permit after the fact? Because either way, and this circumstance puts us in a tough decision either way. If we grant the permit, then whether it's fair or not, the criticism will be that, well, here's the Board of Public Works granting a permit to a group that already took trees out on their own. If we don't grant a permit, then there's here's the Board of Public Works, not even, the trees were removed and no permit was granted, and when they had the opportunity to grant it, they didn't. And if we don't take any punitive action, then there's the Board of Public Works, 18 protected trees were removed, and they had the chance to take punitive action and did nothing. Again, that procedurally that requires a recommendation from Street Services, which we don't have here. And then there's the circumstance of some defending the action would describe the punitive measures as real mitigation in the way of 108 trees, many of them mature, and an obvious tree planting or tree caring maintenance program that we know is going to happen because it's in the best interest of the Bel Air Country Club, and we know they plan on and want to stay around for a long time. So a long way of asking the question of what are the legal ramifications of not granting a permit versus taking the Bureau's action of doing nothing versus Mr. Hall's suggestion of granting a permit, and what's the best way for me to do my job in trying to avoid attracting a lawsuit to the city because of it.
Let me start with the not granting a permit.
The what?
Let me start with not granting the permit.
Okay.
What we're really talking about is not enforcing the provisions of the Protected Tree Ordinance, 4606. That's what was at issue in the Sullivan Canyon case. And as you know, the Bureau of Street Services has the authority to request revocation of building permits after it goes through a hearing process. So not taking any action, which is the recommendation, is really another way of saying that we're recommending, that the Bureau is recommending to not take the enforcement action. The city has a great amount of discretion when it chooses to not enforce something, whether it's a person walking across the street and not enforcing a law against jaywalking or this. The Protected Tree Ordinance gives factors that the Bureau needs to take into account when it chooses to enforce. One of them is the knowledge and intent of the owner of the property with respect to the removal and prior violations of the law with respect to the removal of the protected tree. Those were all factors that were carefully evaluated in prior instances when the Protected Tree Ordinance has been enforced. And the Bureau has come to you with a recommendation to not do enforcement based on the totality of the circumstances, something that it has a great amount of discretion to do or not do. Granting a permit, well, we don't impose permits on people. Permits are granted based on an application. It's not really clear to me in this state if the golf course is even continuing to request a permit. We don't impose permits on people. We grant permits that people have asked for and paid certain fees and posted certain bonds in this case. If they're not doing that, then we can't just simply grant a permit because that would be us imposing a permit.
So they could unilaterally withdraw any request for a permit.
Yes, and at that point, we're not really empowered to grant the permit because, again, we don't impose permits. If people apply for a permit, we can grant it or not. The discretionary approval necessary to grant a permit does trigger CEQA, so we'd be going through, there'd be a CEQA evaluation. Mr. Hall is very familiar with it. There's no guarantee that we wouldn't be challenged if the board makes a CEQA determination in order to grant a permit. That could get appealed to the city council. Ultimately, there could be a lawsuit saying that we violated CEQA for granting a permit even though the trees have already been removed. But the bottom line is the board has discretion to not take any further action. It's really the Bureau's call. The board's involvement in the Sullivan Canyon case, as you may recall, only came about because there was an appeal. Absent the board taking action that the property owner appeals, the board doesn't even get involved in that. So that's reflective of what's agendized before you, which is just the Bureau is reporting to you the status. And the status is they're recommending, they are telling you that they've decided to not take any further action.
Yeah, I don't have, so
There is no action that they're
I
recommending.
don't have a tree removal permit in front of us this morning. Is that correct?
I don't believe you do.
So, and let me add one thing, and then Commissioner Davis, your light's on. I recognize that, and I consider it part of my job. Some might disagree, but to try and keep the city out of lawsuits in these circumstances, and that's why we spend a lot of time, particularly on tree removal items, sending the parties back for further negotiations. But the second half of that job requirement is to represent our constituents as best we can when we have competing interests like here. And when I've got the council office who's elected to do that, that has not shied away from letting us know. As a matter of fact, they didn't reach out. I didn't reach out to them. They reached out to me last night. And Commissioner Davis has asked what the council office said. And the council office requested that we follow the recommendation of the Bureau of Street Services, that they agreed no further action. That was what the council office's recommendation was. That's also the recommendation of the Bel Air Association, and I don't have any indication that I have the recommendation of anybody else in the record other than what we have in front of us. Mr. Hall, I, as usual, will offer you the opportunity to respond to anything that was said regarding the negotiations or discussions, even if they were negotiations, with the Bel Air Country Club or the Bel Air Association. And I offer it to you because you seem to move closer to the podium when that discussion occurred.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So I think I wanted to give a fair characterization. We did have 3 in-person meetings with Adam and their attorney, Mark. And one of them included a site walk at the club with a biologist that we had hired. And we thought, honestly, until like Thursday of last week, that this was all going to be resolved. And so I have here the fact sheet for the Audubon Cooperative Sanctuary Program. And then Adam said that, he felt confident. Apparently, he'd worked for another golf course that did get certified. And he said that the club wanted to become certified. And there is nexus. One of the things here, there's different components as part of that program. One of them is habitat management, and it talks about preservation of your trees. So it's not like this was some irrelevant potential settlement item that had no nexus to what we are dealing with here. So the real rub here was they can't guarantee that they will ultimately become certified. And we said, understood. We understand that. So we got to come up with a plan B. And our first plan B, which they did not oppose at our in-person meeting at the club, was just a cut and dry donation to what we had discussed, the Center for Biological Diversity, which advocates for these sort of issues. And so then it was discussed that maybe they didn't want to make the size donation that we had discussed. So we said, okay, well, how about this? This program has we can imagine it has 100 different components. And maybe you can't become certified because there's 5 of them you can't agree on. So what if Plan B said that you would agree to adhere to those things that were unobjectionable as part of the program? And so we were going back and forth with how do we work that into the agreement? Is there a meet and confer requirement once you've determined that certification is not possible? And ultimately, I got a call from their attorney on Friday saying that, Jamie, this has just become more complicated than we imagined. We just want you to trust us. We've been in the neighborhood for 100 years. Your client just needs to trust us. And, my job is to create something that actually has value and is enforceable. And so that's a problem, just going on blanket faith. And then the other thing is that Mark M. Brewster said that there just wasn't enough time between Friday and Wednesday for us to work through all of these issues. They've indicated today that they're willing to continue to work with Dr. Whitford, and I'd like to see that come to put some more work into it, to be quite honest with you, because throughout the entire discussion, we were not negative, we were making progress, there was lots of work that went into this, they indicated that they want to be part of the program, and I think that that would be an ideal outcome, and so I think we should put a little bit more work into this to see if we can come to resolution.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Jordan, all I see in front of us, there's nothing that keeps the Bel Air Country Club from continuing to work with Dr. Whitford and the rest of the Bel Air community. You live in the Bel Air community, and you're not going anywhere. We know where your property is. So we expect that work to continue. But Mr. Jordan, all I've got in front of me is a request for a withdrawal, which the council, to withdraw the item, which the council office has asked that we do, the Bureau's asked that we do it, and an updated status report, correct?
Yes.
All right, then my action on agenda item number 7, my motion would be, and we normally don't do these, when people ask for withdrawal, we grant it. It doesn't mean it can't resurface.
I'm not sure if there's any place for you, I mean, I'm not sure what action, I'm going to let you speak your motion.
Well, I was just going to make a motion that we withdraw the item. But we usually, Bureau's withdrawal items, we don't have a vote on it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason.
I don't even know that we have much of a choice.
I see no reason for the board to take any action of any kind.
Yeah. What's that?
I see no reason for the board to take any action of any kind.
Okay.
Other than to say thank you.
Yeah. So the Bureau has withdrawn the item. As with other times when the Bureaus withdraw the items, we don't act on them. We, frankly, added, because of that, we added the oral report, which is the status report, which is agenda item number 8, to have this hearing for the benefit of really everyone involved, for the benefit of the board, for the benefit of the Streets LA, for the benefit of Dr. Whitford and Mr. Hall and the communications that they had put in and the work that they had put in on this, for the benefit of the Bel Air Country Club, and for the benefit of the council office and the community, because there were trees that were removed without a permit. I thought it was appropriate and incumbent upon Streets LA to have a hearing today describing and justifying and hearing from the applicant and the opponents on the reason for the requested withdrawal through the status report. So with that, Dr. Campos, have we cleared the desk?
Yes, you have.
Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
You want to put this back in your place?